Hey guys, welcome to episode 30 of Biomassed. I believe we're going to refer to this as the early edition today. So we've got a pretty interesting group of guests, and you'll also notice if you're listening to us live, which means there's probably maybe one, two of you out there listening live, because we're not on our normal time frame. But what we wanted to do is kind of expand our reach a little bit for some of the folks in the Dust community that couldn't normally make it onto the show that we've been wanting to get on. And we've got a couple of them with us here today that I'm sure all of you will know, love, and remember from their escapades on the forums or in game or just random trollage that you see on Skype or Twitter or whatever. But we'll get into that shortly. So again, I'm actually back after a 3-week hiatus or so. So really appreciate that for Uncle Sam. Had a lot of fun while I was gone, but it was a lot of stuff to catch up with, and it took me about a day and a half to really soak up some of the different hot topics on the forums and the different sort of discussions for changes that have been occurring. And one of the things that struck me was the amount of change happening right now in Dust seems to actually be building. There's a fairly steady increment of balance changes and activity going on for the first 3 hot fixes, and sort of what kind of coalesced around my mind when I was stepping back from pretty much all Dust information for about 3 weeks, and then coming back was the amount of things that were potentially in the works is actually pretty high. And at some point in the show, I'm going to have to slap some tinfoil hat on and try to figure out why perhaps that is. But there definitely feels like there's an uptick in the level of, if not development activity, polish activity, or whatever you want to call it. They're doing something back there with like 3 dudes in a broom closet in Shanghai. So it's kind of interesting to see. But without further ado, what we'd like to do is kick off with some quick introductions, and we'll go right from the top of the list. So Arkina, you're up first, brother.
Hi.
That is the man that we know and love as Arkina Wareinspire.
I am always eloquent.
Absolutely. Concise and to the point as always. At some point, he's going to break into a soliloquy that'll put Hamlet to shame. And Breakin.
I don't know why you guys invited me. As the other guy on the forum said, clearly I don't contribute anything of value to Dust.
well, you're certainly no better or worse than anything that we're doing here. Okay, Pokey.
Yeah, I'm Pokey Draven, CEO of OSG Planetary Operations and co-host here on Biomassed.
Zell?
Sarai Zell, a CPM1 member, a leader in the Top Men Alliance, and occasional forum troll.
Who?
And secret lover of Kane Sparrow. And I'm Jason Larison. I'm a member of OSG Planetary Operations and Agony Unleashed on the U side.
Yeah, so just for the record, just so that it's on there, Kane did said he was gonna be on this episode again too. So, but yeah.
You know, if you have 2 goons in the same place, this freaking channel will explode.
Don't cross the streams. No, that's okay. Kane legitimately. It's kind of funny watching how his engagement, his communication has changed. Like he was the bitterest of the bitter vet for towards the end of his CPM time, and it was actually really painful to try to engage him in any kind of form of communication, and then suddenly, like out of nowhere, it's like, I think I'm going to get my even Dust is transfer going again. I think I'm going to buy some BPOs again. So it's kind of interesting. He's definitely, I think, taken a much needed step away from the game for a little while. So I don't know. Who knows? But although having 2 goons in the same room is just absolute fucking childish laughter for me on my end, though.
Kane's reinstalling. He might be on here in a few.
Ah, cool. Well, the first thing we're going to do is turn it over to Sarai Zell for a CPM update, because my understanding prior to the show, he kind of laid some pretty serious shit on us guys. It looks like a pretty beefy update in terms of CPM discussions this week. And without further ado, we don't want to steal any thunder from the mighty Sarai Zell. So Zell, what did the CPM do this week?
Jay is a troll. The CPM actually had like a really long meeting last night, but it wasn't with CCP. We did not have any official meetings with CCP this week.
So you've all heard it here. Zell has now confirmed that Legion will be a real-time strategy game.
Okay.
All right, he told me it was going to be like Farmville. You lying sack.
No, that's the new World of Warcraft expansion. It's like Farmville.
Oh hey, Cat Mug arrived.
When wasn't it?
All right, hold on, guys. So we have a new guest, new to the show, and again, I think probably a lot of folks from the Dust community know him. Cat Merc, you mind giving a quick intro to yourself? Oh, total fail. See, he doesn't have a thumb, so it's really hard for him to start working a keyboard. On that note, we're gonna wait until Cat Merc figures out how to get the animal to human speech, switch button turned on, and we'll kind of kick it off. But legitimately, we actually had a lot of topics that have been brewing for the last couple of weeks. There he is.
Yeah. Just going to suggest putting out some cream.
Excellent, excellent.
So, hi there.
Hello.
It seems that what's the button for push to talk?
You've got to find that.
You have to set it.
Oh.
It's under configure and settings. You have to set it yourself.
Mumble noob.
We run an incredibly professional.
This is very high end. You
then I have to ask again. What am I doing here?
Everyone is voice checked in advance, and we get everybody set up right.
No, it's all good.
Cat is subhuman, so.
Yep, we got you. No, I'm telling you, he's at a disadvantage. He has no opposable thumbs, but other than that, I think he's being able to overcome that.
Of course I can. I am the overlord of all humans.
I love it. All right.
Yes. Okay. We'll get right on that.
Okay, guys. Well, let's kind of kick it off kind of for the first couple topics. And this couple things we very briefly mentioned prior to the show coming on. There's been a lot of discussion about two sort of technical topics in the game. One of which is sort of how eWar needs to adjust away from a binary sort of I win, you lose sort of mechanic to something that's a little bit more that's got a little bit more give and take to it and provide some flexibility for folks outside of the scout class. So what I'd kind of like to do is just kind of open it up to the floor to you guys in terms of what your general thoughts are. Actually, Zell, if you don't mind, would you kind of do a quick 30-second tee up of what the proposal is for the I guess the precision and dampening bands, or the sort of the bullseye method that they've been discussing on the forums, and we can kick it out to our illustrious guests and we can have a quick conversation on it.
Okay, so basically it's fairly simple. Is right now everybody has kind of a scan range around them, their passive scan range, and you either meet it or you don't. And the big change that they're working on is that there will be 3 circles of passive range, of which will be above, and the outermost will obviously be the weakest and the innermost to be the strongest, so that the distance people are from you actually has an effect on their ability to be seen or not seen on scanners.
Okay. Well, I mean, off the top of my head, that sounds like a better way to do it than we're doing it now. I'm kind of curious, what are your guys' thoughts on it?
I think it's actually a pretty eloquent way to do it, because it means that a decreased profile means you can just get closer to somebody before being scanned, rather than at whatever range you're impossible to see on scans. I think it pushes a little more player thought into eWar and actually knowing, okay, I can get this close to this guy before he's going to be able to see me, rather than running around like an idiot because your profile's below a certain point. So I think it puts a little more skill into it, that you have to move around and be smart and position yourself in a way where you can actually get the kill without getting within the range where he's going to see you. So I think it's, at least on a broad scale, a pretty good idea.
All right, I'm going to have to ask a question to clarify before I weigh in here. Are they going to be changing the whoever has the lower profile or signature profile or scanning strength? I mean, is it automatically going to be that binary? If you're underneath their number, you win automatically?
Yes, it's going to stay that way. Apparently, it's very hard-coded into the game and hard to change.
Son of a bitch.
I'm not convinced the set of changes will do much, because the rings are only 10% changes, and the differences between rings aren't huge.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
And the other thing is that the Scout eWar superiority is just so far ahead of all the other suits that they won't be able to compete, even if even if with these changes, because an undampened scout can still go right up to an assault on shot, even if the assault has a precision enhancer and get under the scans.
It's almost entirely impossible to get a assault suit scan profile underneath an undampened scout profile. Period. End stop. Even the Minmatar scout, it's almost impossible. This is my problem with the thing. Everybody's sensor blind. Scouts still retain the advantage.
Yeah, I don't. Now, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Like you're referring to getting the assault suits profile below a scout suit scan. Is that what you're saying?
No, getting it's either
Undampened
case.
scout.
In both case.
Yep.
In both case, an undampened scout, you're not going to be able to scan them, no matter how many precision enhancers you
Okay.
put in
No,
because
I'm
of
with you.
stacking
That's not
penalties.
That's not quite true. You can actually get an undampened scout scanned on shot if you stack a load of precision enhancers, but I think the cost of doing
Right.
that is disproportionate to what scouts are sacrificing.
That is
I would agree
exactly
with that.
kind of my point, because unless you're dropping 4 of them in to an assault, odds are you're not picking them up, especially if he's got his E-War skills to 5.
Yeah, I mean, it just conceptually, if you take an assault or I used to do this with Logi suits actually. I would run a kind of an E-War style Logi suit, Cal Logi that was racked out with precision enhancers. But one of the things that strikes me is that I don't mind if a scout suit can, I guess conceptually, what I would like is if I wanted to make the trade-offs for an assault or a Logi to increase my range or my precision, I want a chance to find a scout suit, unless it's at the very highest end of its capability.
Even
but
if it's only a 1 in 20 chance.
Something, I mean, I think there's got to be some reality involving in it, because what I don't like is when you're within 5 meters of a scout and they're within visual range and you can see them, they still don't show up on your overhead. That's a little shady to me,
Yeah.
particularly the uncloaked ones.
So, I mean, I think, like, personally, when I heard the 10% number, I think that's a little weak too. Would you say that really the only thing is that it particularly needs to be a stronger effect of these circles? I mean, like, what I was talking conceptually is that it should be pretty darn near impossible to stand directly behind someone and not be seen on scan.
At least not if you're undampened.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
Well, if you
agree.
look at the spreadsheet I linked, that's exactly what I did. I changed the numbers around so that as long as you have 1 to 2 enhancers, a scout will have a lot of difficulty to go under your scanners at short range.
I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, that's kind of the design.
Well, unless you're a fat suit, but I'm not really going to argue that point because they're supposed to be the bane of the fat suit anyway.
The other thing is the range of the shortest ring is actually so short on non-scout suits that you're actually in knife range before things are in a shot. Which is, I suppose, even if you are picking them up, it's a little bit too late at that point.
Yeah, but on a Logi, the short range with 2 amplifiers will be 18 meters. So
that's still inside the small ring of the radar. That's just it. The small ring of the radar is within 20 meters. Then you get the next one is within, I want to say another 40 meters out. And the outside ring is somewhere around 120 meters.
Well, there's 2 things. There's 2 things here. One is, just kind of the sort of the actual player feel of it. I do think that scouts should have the capability with a properly fit suit to be able to get right up to you within overknife range. I mean, that is sort of what their thing is.
Mm-hmm.
That is still true.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, what I would also offer is the first thing I saw when I looked at the kind of the bullseye method, because it strikes me that they could actually make additional rings. So basically, you make the increments like much smaller increments, but like have the fan go out longer. Does that kind of make sense? Like instead of having these big chunk increments in terms of where the fall offs are, like make smaller increments.
Yeah,
but a lot more,
it makes sense, but I don't think suits have enough range for that.
That's fair enough. Okay.
Because if you divide the scan ranges of any non-scout suit into more than 3 things, you end up with such tiny ranges.
Yeah, I actually asked on the thread if it reduces performance, because I just wonder if adding extra rings reduces performance.
Honestly, if I was going to suggest an improvement to the concentric rings thing, I would change the not the precision enhancers, but the range enhancers, so that they don't provide a percentage. Because I'm sorry, starting at 10, 15 meters on a suit, the percentages are pathetic. As far as I'm concerned, the range extenders for all of the suits should provide a flat bonus.
The thing about that is then you end up with scaling issues like what you have with plates and extenders and things. If you have a flat bonus, then it's no different between suits. Then potentially a Sentinel could stack a bunch of evil mods.
Yeah, he could. Yeah. You will know what happens to a Sentinel who stacks nothing but E-War mods?
They end up with lots of E-War on an HMG?
I've done this. I've played this game. You get ripped apart by the guy with the assault rifle. It's a 50-50 chance.
Percentage based.
But the thing is, if you had the E-War, you would actually be able to see that assault before he got to you.
No, the thing is you're not going. The only people that you're going to be able to see, period, are going to be assaults. It's that simple. Assaults and logistics. You cannot get a Sentinel sensors under the Scout.
I would agree with that. I would also, just as anecdotally, I've seen a couple of people run, Minmatar Sentinels with damps, and
I've done it.
That's one of the more entertaining troll fits I've seen in a while.
But that's the problem, is it's only valuable as a troll fit. It's not valuable as an actual combat fit.
Well,
not for anything.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is like, in my head, like something like a Blops battleship. Yeah,
Wait, how low can the Sentinel get with damping?
Not under. You can't get a Sentinel's damps even with a Mars suit. You can't get your Sentinel under a Scout's scan profile. It's impossible.
But you can get it under assault and logi suits, and that's usually where the fun is.
That's easy. That's why I don't suggest making the dampeners or the precision enhancers. That's why I don't want to make the damps or the precision enhancers a flat number. Just
okay,
the
I misunderstood
range.
You then, because I thought that you meant that you'd be able to
Absolutely
stack precision
not.
on. Yeah. Okay.
No. I only want the range ones to give a flat bonus. That way, the scanner radar is useful. Because let's face it, if you take an Amar Sentinel or a Galent Sentinel, they're going to gain the most from having the range extenders, having a flat number, but they're going to get almost no benefit from the other E-War mods. I mean, they're too big, they're too clunky, what have you. And in the Amars Sentinel's case, especially, you only have room for one precision enhancer. Now, this is valuable if you have range, because you can get under an assault's undampened scan profile or a Logi's undampened scan profile, even if they have level 5 in the skill. But you can't get it under any sort of dampened enemy target profiles.
Well, I think a better solution would actually be to increase the base ranges on most suits.
Right.
I think necessary, honestly.
Yeah, because 10 to 15 meters is absolutely nothing. Yeah, especially considering there's a delay when you scan down a suit, it doesn't instantly show up.
No, it doesn't. But
you are very likely to be shotgunned by the time you have detected the Scout.
Oh god! Yep. Unless you are rocking massive amounts of precision enhancers, you're getting shotgunned. It's that simple.
True.
So, I mean, realistically, the only chance of being able to get enough precision enhancers enough to see the shotgun Scout, like especially on a Sentinel, is going to be if you're running a Caldari fit. But
even then,
you do that.
All you need is
sacrificing everything.
2 dampeners and a cloak, if I remember correctly, to get under the most powerful scans.
That's exactly it. It's not worth the effort. It's worth the effort to get the scans out so that you can detect assaults and logis. And let's be realistic. If you're going to be playing a Sentinel and you're playing point defense, you're worried more about other Sentinels, you're worried more about logis, and you're worried about assaults. Scouts you can't do shit about, so why bother trying to get under those damps?
True.
I'll buy that. All right, so real quick, I think the general consensus is that I haven't found anybody that likes the current E-War mechanism, so I think we all are pretty much in agreement that there needs to be some change. And I think,
well, maybe except for Scouts, since they have complete superiority in it.
I tell you what, like after talking to some pretty dedicated Scout players, they're like guys that like play Scout like daily and really don't play anything else. They are okay with the change. I think it's the echelon below that kind of dabble in it every once in a while as like a go-to suit. I'm not. I think they're more interested in retaining it.
I dabble in the scout suits right now, and quite frankly, I'm actually doing better without the cloak with a Quaif
Yes.
Scout.
Yep.
I'm having, believe it or not, I'm pretty horrible at just about everything in this game except for AV. And I'm getting some pretty impressive risk reward returns with a Quaif Cal Scout with like level 3 Caldari Scouts and running a Mad Bomber fit. All I'm doing is throwing remote explosives at people and blowing their asses up. I'm getting amazing returns on that tactic.
Yeah, because it's overpowered.
If I remember correctly, the Apex suits actually have a remote explosive fitted. Not sure, but
they do.
One of them has.
I'm
yes,
told
so...
the Gal Scout one has it.
Exactly,
Someone told me in Discord the other day that it was a change, but I've heard nothing about that.
Another fun one to consider is the oh great, I lost my train of thought. Well, congratulations, my brain doesn't work.
Yay!
Well,
your scan attempt failed.
Yep.
On the note of not using a cloak, I don't actually think the cloak is particularly useful.
It can be. If you're standing still, it's hella useful.
It's
but
useful
if you're
then,
moving,
but
it's
for
worthless.
Anything else?
It's a good hiding toy.
Depends.
And honestly, with
especially
when you've got Scout.
Okay, Arkina, go ahead.
Okay, when you've got Scout E-War, you should probably know where everyone else is well enough to be able to hide without the cloak.
I'm going to have to disagree with you here, especially when you've got a Caldari Scout. This is one of the reasons why we're seeing so many little beggars. Once you know where the target is, and you've got a good enough cloak, you cloak up, and you get close, and then you stop moving. And then all you have to do is wait for them to move. Once they are not facing directly at you, you can get up behind them, Nova Knife them, or shotgun them in the back, however you want to do it. Me, I'm going to try the Mass Driver, because it's far more entertaining.
Well, that's another issue with the fact that direction of where you're facing shows up on scans now.
Well, I'm talking you can even do it visually.
And ladies and gentlemen, Kane Sparrow. Can you give a quick intro, please?
Yes, Kane Sparrow, former member of the CPM, so member of CPM 1. I need to change my settings. I'm currently typing tons of Qs in Skype, apparently, because of my push-to-talk setting.
Okay, you've officially made Sarazel's day. He's dancing his happy, happy, joy, joy dance right now behind the keyboard.
It seemed everything possible that could go wrong did go wrong in me trying to set this thing up, but I finally got it to work. I just had to pound the computer enough.
So there's nothing you can't fix with a hammer.
Exactly.
Okay. Well,
or duct tape.
Yeah. You just hopped into sort of the tail end of our discussion about E-War, and kind of like I said, I think there's a big groundswell for there's a desire to change E-War, and this is one of these where, because it is currently a binary equation in terms of winning and losing, there is a need to change it because you're going to disadvantage people. They don't really have the capability of doing true fall off. I don't think. Past an optimal like you do with a weapon. So, and to me, that would be the ideal way of doing it.
Even with the binary system, I still think they could have handled it better.
I don't disagree.
Such complete superiority is like it makes it so that medium frames have nothing to do in the Eivor game. They just break up and do nothing else.
Oh, that's true.
I do have a suggestion. I just don't know how viable it is. And that honestly would be to just keep the system that we've got, but just add like a 1 to 15 random number generator, or a 1 to 30, one that can go 15 points up or down on the DB scale. So you can potentially your scanner can jump up 15 points and lose that sentinel, or it could potentially drop 15 points and grab that thing. You don't need to remove anything. You don't need to change the core things. You just need to put a RNG somewhere between the profile check and the scan check.
Well, I don't really like RNG in games. I like to know what the hell is going on.
Right, but the thing is that's really the only way to create a failure point in the E-War system, because the always binary, one will always win, one will always lose. If you avoid getting scanned this time, you will always avoid getting scanned. The only way to bypass that is with a random number generator, unfortunately. Now, nobody likes random number generators, but this is not the same as putting a random number generator on the loot table like Destiny has, or like our much vaunted and beloved salvage table.
Officer weapons, anyone?
Yeah, exactly.
After playing 30 matches, I finally got my first officer drop in this event today.
After playing 2 matches, I got a Wolfman Scramble pistol.
Did you burn it?
How many of those do you have already?
I'm not sure, I just know that I got 3 of them.
I'd sell anything marked Wolfman. I'm not fond of that particular dev, personally.
Suicide without the MCC.
Yeah,
The-
there you go.
The fall off system that Rattati has proposed, though, I think that kind of puts in a little bit more to the up or down kind of did you win, did you lose type of deal, and I think that's kind of a good meeting ground rather than trying to go right into some kind of RNG setup.
Yeah, I think that with having 3 rings, this allows more wiggle room in like the Evo game.
Well, my point in favor of the concentric rings over doing the RNG is because you can tweak the amount the concentric rings give up and down in order to kind of balance things out. My only major change that I would make to it is I would change the range. Like I said earlier, Kane wasn't here, the range modules, so that they gave a flat like 15 meter bonus to the range of your scans rather than a percent-based bonus.
Yeah,
Well,
12 to 15 meters is about what ring jumps give you right now.
Depending on what suit you're in, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about scouts.
Yeah. But a 15 meter ranged boost with a range enhancer, that's useful to everybody. Unfortunately, right now, the only thing that range enhancers are particularly useful for are the Cal Scouts because of their bonusing.
Yeah, but you can see, I mean, the deal with percentages versus flat rates is that's not uncommon with a lot of other areas in Dust because of the numbers get so small. It's really you're buying like fractions of a second in terms of different advantages that you get. So I'm a big fan of actually trying to figure out perhaps some more concrete bonuses that you can give, which frankly make it easier, I think, to balance in terms of percentages, because percentages are they're so dependent on the suit itself, depending on what with whatever you're setting it up to do. But again, that's just my thoughts on it.
No, I agree. It's my thing is the reason why I don't suggest putting taking the percentages off and putting flat bonuses on the other E-War mods is because of the points you guys brought up earlier. I agree with them. You shouldn't be able to damp a sentinel underneath the scouts. E-War. I mean, the Minotaur troll fit, yeah, it's all fun in games until somebody does something really stupid.
I will say this as if I were like really going to go whiteboard theory on it, it would be really, and you had a lot more suit specialties and roles that you could put out. I think having a commando or a sentinel like a Blops style, where you shaved off tank and some other things, but you traded certain amount of a certain amount of dampening and scan and additional scan capability, that actually might be a kind of a fun fit to mess around with, but it would definitely be very specialized.
Don't get me started on commandos. They're just not fun to play right now.
Okay, so now you Pokey Draven?
Commandos, yeah. It's very frustrating to play as a commando because their role is similar to that of an assault, but they're inferior in so many ways, E-War being a big one. I mean, I've become really frustrated recently with the E-War.
I'm going to have to disagree with your assessment. Not so many ways, just about every way.
Okay.
Well, I do love the commando for AV, but that's about it.
Well, don't get me wrong, I love the suit. There's just some things that I feel need to be tweaked to bring them a little more in line with in terms of the assault. Because I mean, unless it's a massive overhaul on the role they play, they are for all intents and purposes similar to the assault, just a little more frontal and less flanking due to their increased HP and lower speed.
Well, not to mention that hit box that they get.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, right now, the only thing that the Commando brings to the table is it gives diehard Sentinel players an assault suit without having to spec into mediums.
Yeah, I can kind of buy that.
I mean, I've said for a long time that I think that basically the assaults and the commandos need to have a baby, and then need to do the new assault suit. Like, assaults should have had 2 light weapons from the start, some sort of damage bonus, and the commandos probably should have just never existed. As much as I love them,
Yeah,
Commandos
that's what I
should have been a
wanted to
command
say.
suit.
they're way too similar to really give them distinctive roles. So they're just slight variants of each other, and the commando falls short in a lot of ways.
Honestly, I
The
think
assault never had an actual role beside just kill stuff, just
I
run
think it
around
would
and
have been
kill
nice
stuff.
if the assault had
So-
ended up with 2 light weapons instead of having to
Exactly.
just buff it HP wise.
Exactly, because
We-
every suit has something special. The Sentinels have their massive HP, Logistics have 4 equipment, Scouts have their
Sentinels have
cloak.
the heavy weapons, more to the point.
Yeah, and that too. Assaults have nothing special that most suits can't imitate.
Well, you know, assaults were in a much better place, I think, back in the day when they actually had
Oh,
2
I know,
equipment
I know.
slots.
I don't know. I mean, the assault suit is designed to be more of a generalist suit. I mean, that's. I think
Well,
they're not bad.
I
mean,
think
you get to work with some of the
generalist
role
suits
parts.
should be more the frame suits rather than the
Yeah, the
specialized
basic
suits.
frames.
Yeah,
yes.
that's like a whole. Yeah, no, I agree. But that's also a whole separate line. Is the utter lack of utility for the frame suits, and I will tell you that I like when I actually started playing Dust. I joke with the guys about this. I actually skilled up like Caldari medium frames to 4 because I thought, like in Eve, I was going to get a bonus for the frame and the specialized suit, or what I was thinking was a Tech 2 suit. And then, yeah, I discovered that very quickly that was not the case.
You've been screwed.
I believe
Yeah,
we've
that's
also
okay.
I believe we've also missed one topic besides bandwidth and the E-War concentric rings. The third one is potential movement penalties on defensive modules.
Yeah, that's
Ooh,
actually a great one to
that.
bring up. That's like I can sort of buy that conceptually when you hang armor on something that it makes it a little harder to move. I got that, but what really threw me for a loop was the whole shield extender idea. I was like, I don't know if fucking planet they're living on, but like I'm pretty sure that it's not something that
I was
should be
under the
slowing you
impression
down.
Short
the shield
answer-
generators had weight.
The short answer that doesn't involve saying shield generators have weight, which is a valid one, is going to be game balance. Because unfortunately, the way it works out is the shield suits are the easiest ones to pull what we call the strafe glitch up, which is a combination of bad hit detection, too fast strafing, and no inertia, and lag. That's why we get the. That's why Cal Scouts actually get the most benefit out of it because they have the smallest hitbox. Believe it or not, the second easiest one to do that with is the Minmatar Scout.
No, I think
I don't see why you would believe it, considering they're the fastest suit in the game.
The thing is, they've got a slightly bigger hitbox than the Cal Scout.
Wait, they do?
They do. That's why Cal Scout
Really?
seems to ghost through everything.
I'm pretty sure that the scout hitbox is actually universal across the scouts, just like
That was
medium
what
suits.
I
Yeah,
thought.
I
and heavy
do remember
suits.
actually Ratati saying they're exactly the same.
Really? Because that means that there's some straight space magic going on with the Caldari Scout. Like there's a hidden bonus or something that wasn't intended. Or an old bonus that got discarded and forgot to be removed from the system.
I think it's just shenanigans with the hitbox that they didn't manage to find when they looked for the problem.
But in any case,
So, although I do actually have a question. So, the theory behind shield tanking is that you should be more mobile, and that's one of the driving factors behind shield tank play. So, again, I go back to what level of penalty would you then install for a shield extender?
Well, look
Well,
at
much lower.
Again,
Ratati did say it will be lower than plates, but just to add a point here, mobility isn't just about strafing, it's also about how fast can you, say, cross an open area, because for me as a Galente assault with a plasma rifle, which means that I need to get in close, it's very, very important to have high mobility.
I
It
do
isn't
have
just
something.
about strafing.
and that's
I
the
do
other
have something to say about that. Ratati said he wanted to put strafe speed penalties, not forward and backward momentum penalties, not
Yes.
turn penalties. And you got to remember, armor plates already provide a strafe speed penalty because they provide a base movement penalty. Everything is based off of your forward movement speed. Armor plates already provide a penalty, so basically what's going to happen is plates are going to get a
No,
double penalty for strafe.
As far as I'm aware, it's not based on the base forward movement speed. there are different values that are getting affected at the same time.
But the thing is, what it amounts to is each like a prototype plate gives a 5% penalty to your movement speed. Gives a 5% penalty to your movement speed. Each plate does.
That is correct, but it also applies a 5% penalty to a hidden modifier that we can't see in the game, that is strafing speed.
No, that's my point. The armor plate penalty already applies to everything. Adding another strafing speed penalty is going to stack a second penalty on top of it. Now,
Correct.
There's no base 5% penalty for shields, so you're not going to magically get that there. And if the actual strafe penalty is lower than the one you're going to put on plates, you're still going to see faster net strafing speeds on a shield suit than you are on an armor suit.
Right, but just I'm with you, but
I think that's
just
fine, honestly.
the logic behind it though is, I think, a bit flawed.
The logic's going to have to take a backseat to the game balance, is my point. Because,
and that's going to be real helpful. That's kind of like how what has drawn dust to the point it is now, dude.
The logic is that the Rattati doesn't want people to just stack HP, and honestly, shield suits mostly stack HP and nothing else. I mean,
the one that confuses me is, why are Sentinels going to get a huge penalty? I mean,
they should actually get a less penalty. Yeah, if you think about it.
That's my point. They're already giant. They're huge. They're freaking.
Are they getting a disproportionate penalty?
Yes.
They're gonna get the same kind of penalty that Scouts will.
Apparently, he's balancing it so that medium frames get the least affected by it, while Scouts
it should be the other way around. Heavy suits should have the least amount of effect from weight, and then it scales dramatic. See, to me, that's how you fix this. Is that, the heavier the suit, it's designed to carry more weight in theory, so it has the least impact in terms of the penalties you attach to it.
Do we want to encourage Sentinels to fit more HP?
Yeah, dude, they're not going to fit any more HP than they're already doing now.
Yeah, the standard for Sentinels is a minimum of 1,200 hit points, generally averaging out somewhere between 1,300 and 1,500 hit points.
I mean, here's so basically, your Sentinels right now are not going. You can't magic up any more HP than they're already carrying. But what you want to do is, like, the impact on them in terms of the weight should be a little bit less. I think the medium should stay about where it is now in terms of, like, for example, the armor movement penalties. But the Scouts, unless you're putting on like reactive or ferro scale particularly, like, you should get a significantly increased penalty. Now, the problem with shield extenders, I acknowledge that is HP, but that is the whole point of a shield extender, is that it does not impact your movement. Now, if they would impact their signature, which I think would be more critical to the Scouts, it would increase their signature. It can't?
It can't.
Okay.
It is not mechanically feasible.
That to me would have been by far the better answer.
Wait.
That's
Where
much more
did
like
you
what they
see
do.
that?
NDA.
Also, another thing is I think the idea of excluding reactives and ferroscale from the penalties is a bad idea. If you're going to put it on extenders, put it on reactives and ferroscales. They provide the same effective EHP.
Yeah, that I agree with.
Just not the same as the other plates.
Yeah, I did not say exclude them. I just said there should be a significantly lower penalty.
You did not say, but unless I misread Rattati very seriously, he did.
No, he said that he's going to exclude it for now. He's going to add them later because he just wants to be careful. That's all.
Hence why that's one of the big caveat in there.
Like a lot
that's
of
the thing.
Stuff.
He wants to encourage people to use ferroscales and reactives. He wants to discourage people from the high HP plates.
So I have to say this because I watched him do this with the rifles, and now I've watched him do it with suits and modules and different kind of things. It is very apparent to me that his idea of balance is balance in usage percentages, because that's basically what he has been saying quite fairly directly, and that's how he is actually shaping the balance. That's not balance when you have so many options that are available to the players. I'm a little leery of the direction it's going if that is the balance that we're pushing on.
But that's not the only metric by any stretch.
That is
there
part
are
of
a
it.
lot of things being considered.
If you look at a suit not being served or being used too heavily, your next question is, okay, why is it used so heavily or not being used? That's
Yep.
It is a flag of a problem. It is not the point of balance.
But
yeah, it's kind of like the rail rifle when people are saying it's overpopular. The rail rifle being overpopular is something that you find is a symptom of the problem. It's a warning flag. Now, if the rail rifle is getting one kill for every spawn, if it's getting one kill for every spawn, and like the assault rifle is getting one kill for every spawn, well, then the balance is working between the two. But if the rail rifle is getting 5 kills per spawn versus the AR's 1, then it's an indication that there's something hinky.
Then you also have to look at the context. That's always one of the things. You can look into numbers, but you also have to look at context as well.
Yeah,
so
the rail rifle.
Yeah,
so while I agree.
So yeah, I mean, look, with the rail rifle, it's much longer range. You have tons of parts of these maps that are open with no cover, and you have to take in all the aspects of the numbers. You can't be like just numbers. There has to be context too.
Look at the suits that are likely to use said weapons.
Yeah, I'm believe it or not, I'm not done yet. The whole thing is the usage statistics, but the problem is a lot of the maps. It's like the Sentinel problem. It's one of the reasons why I absolutely hate having Sentinels in CQC, because the map design encourages bricking out Sentinel squads on top of objectives. And there's no penalty to doing it, because CQC negates every penalty a Sentinel has.
Well, CQC in current E-War.
E-War is worthless when you can sit yourself in a hallway with your back to a wall. You can see everybody coming.
Well, that assumes you have a roof above your head. Or
you do,
a scout sharing all of the scans in the game so you don't have an E-War penalty to begin with.
Well, you can put your back to a wall in the lab.
I think that HMGs need their DPS reduced but range increased. 800 DPS is just too ridiculous.
The problem is in my opinion, 1.8 was the huge-ass mistake, because they didn't touch the HMG. They buffed the EHP of the rifles, or they buffed the EHP of all of the Sentinels as soon as they added the Sentinels. And then they nerfed the rifles with the same movement.
Yep.
It was too much, too fast, too all at once.
One of the things that's also been a core...
Sentinel squads.
Yeah, and I think one of the core problems I think that Dust has always had is the fact that they went out the gate with different hitboxes between the different classes, rather than being able to balance just on straight stats, hit points, that kind of thing. They also throw in the wild card of how many hits are you going to get on said target, because it's a smaller target or it's a bigger target, etc.
Because that makes the balance points a judgment call rather than a math equation.
Well, you could look at in percentages how much larger the Sentinel hitbox is from the Assault, for example.
Yeah, but that's working off of averages, and averages don't always work. In fact, they don't usually work when you start throwing humans at the problem.
Filthy humans.
Yes, filthy humans. I've perfected at least 100 ways to skin cats, by the way.
One of the big issues that we keep running into is the simple fact that the original Dust team frankly lacked a lot of vision. They had a lot of imagination and a lot of possibility, but a cohesive vision where things actually had purpose and roles isn't really present. And you can see that in almost every aspect of the game. The individual things like, okay, this is a rail rifle, or, this is a logistics suit, whatever. Those are generally at least passable, and some of them are really downright good. But when you start putting them all together, it's very clear that there are seams and that they were not developed with one cohesive method behind all of it.
The scary thing is, believe it or not, just about every piece of equipment in Dust actually has a real-world analog in infantry combat, except for the power armor. Every weapon, I can point at an infantry analog and where it would fit into a battlefield. The HMGs, the forge guns, every type of rifle, the E-War stuff, everything has a real-world analog. Oh, no. There are things that behave similarly. It's just not as obnoxious. Things that serve the same purpose, in other words.
Flux grenade.
That one is...
Flashbang.
That one's more small scale, but flashbang fits the bill.
I'm not sure it does.
There are also EMP cluster bombs. They're not pocket-sized, but they definitely exist.
Yeah.
A nuclear warhead, handheld grenade, similar.
I think when you're dealing with nuclear warheads, the huge nuclear explosion is more of a concern.
Well, the funny thing is according to lore, Minmatar pack nuclear warheads into their bullets, so take that as you will.
Hopefully not on the ground.
Now you're in power armor, you're good to go. If you can survive a plasma shotgun firing at close range, you can survive a nuclear attack at close range.
You deploy via a small black
correctly, the wall actually sets the user on fire.
Yep.
Without power armor.
That's what happens when you're standing next to ambiplasma going off.
By the way, guys, real quick, Cross, can you give a quick intro?
I'm Cross-A2, CPM-1 member of OSG Planetary Operations and Covert Interventions Alliance, and I've spent more time working on Dust this week than my overtime job.
Cross push my agendas.
My arms are tired.
He's too busy pushing mine.
Oh, goodness gracious. This should be
According
interesting.
to the forums, I have my own agendas because I'm an evil, corrupt CPM, which is true of everyone. Kane knows this.
All CPMs are evil and corrupt, don't you know?
Cross, just start telling everybody that I'm your secret puppet master.
No,
they'll believe you.
I think most people think Cross definitely has his own agenda. I don't think there's any doubt about that. No, but the only ones that they truly think are actually like corrupt and spent and broken in some sort of dark rotted way, or folks like Soraya.
But isn't he?
Pretty much.
Well, he is a goon.
No, he's not.
He's like a goonlet.
Yeah, he wants to be.
Well, you don't have to be a good goon, but then again, that's hard to define anyway.
Goons in the goons and in the CFC are actually two different things. Similar, but
potato
different.
Dildo.
I have a something awful account. I don't know if I don't think I post on it enough to actually be a goon, quote unquote. But
Pat,
you'll get there eventually.
Okay, so we've kind of covered a wide gamut of topics already, and at this point, this is kind of we're joking about this in Skype. By the way, this is sort of where you just like roll raw meat into the room and let people nerd out on it together. But the one thing Cross did say that actually piqued my interest right there was the reference about the vision for how the game should work, or at least how all of the different components of the game work, all the way from the weapon systems, the suits, the vehicles. That vision, at least the unifying vision or the synchronization of all those different facets. That is actually something that I know I personally think is the root cause of a lot of the challenges in terms of balance that you see today. And the example I've used with a couple folks is, I've made no secret about it. Like I use a rail rifle a lot, like a whole lot, but I also would offer that it was probably a very poorly designed weapon to start with. And what effectively people are trying to do is put Band-Aid through balance patches over a poorly designed weapon concept. And you just get pushed into these weird corners like you are with it now. And there's other examples in the game. And I think that's, Cross kind of hit the nail on the head. It was more about the starting vision or the starting idea of how these things would mesh together in live play that was really lacking. So having a good imagination is good, but not having the ability to coalesce around that imagination and turn it into some sort of unified, an actual working, playing thing that we're dealing with as the player community. I think that was really one of the biggest beefs that Rattati's got to work through now with all of the work he's doing.
The number of threads that I've started or participated in with feedback that have come down to people arguing about what it's supposed to do in the first place and not even touching on how it can do any of the things or if it can do any of the things or how much it should is just really staggering. Like feedback and discussions has a lot of great material in there, but so many threads just devolved into different camps saying, no, it should be this, not that. And you can't get anywhere with that because people have their own ideas and you can't really prove one is better than the other.
Yeah, let's point at the Commando thing that I participated in. That's the one I'm familiar with. Honestly, along that vein, Kane said something the other day that actually brings things into stark clarity. Another problem with the vision thing is so many of the weapons, CCP took great pains to make them so disparately different that a lot of them are situationally useless. And a lot of the concepts, if you put those concepts in front of a modern military, given the limitations that they had, they'd be like, no, the combat rifle is the only viable one. No, really, the combat rifle is the only viable one.
It's pretty accurate.
The thing is all of the battle rifles is what I'm going to call them, from the scrambler rifle to the combat rifle to the assault rifle to the rail rifle, and every variant therein, they are supposed to be a mainline basic infantry weapon. They should be performing very similarly. The only difference should be in their firing profiles, minor differences in range, rate of fire, how much recoil, things like that. They should have very similar performance statistics across the board. But the fact that you want to make the rail rifle useless in CQC, you want to make the assault rifle useless past 40 meters, you're going to create a situation where the only ones that are really viable eventually are going to be the scrambler rifle and the combat rifle, because they are all too different and they all perform their roles badly. It's supposed to be a mainline, generic battle weapon, not a this is only good for CQC. That should be a function of the armor, not the weapon.
Yeah, the one thing that I think, I'd have to say that Braken's onto something here is the one thing that if there was going to be some level of homogeneous mechanics, or at least homogeneous performance in the game, and when I say homogeneous, I don't mean like truly even them out, but if you took the difference in the rifles and from the far end to the into the spectrum for whatever category, be it range, DPS, or whatever, if the difference was like 5 or 10% and not 25%, which is about what it would be now, that would be much more realistic. That would be a lot better, because what you can't do is have racial lines that are, particularly in terms of range, you can't have them so spread out, because it makes it really, really difficult to work with. Now, I do like the idea. I do like the damage profiles being noticeably different, but
Absolutely.
how you
I was
deliver
about to mention that.
right, but how you deliver the DPS. Here's the thing: how you deliver the shots needs to be pretty standard across the board. The performance should come really in some really, really small tweaks in the mechanics in terms of the handling and the feel of the weapon, and like I said, the damage profile. But when you've got mechanics like how the rail rifle operates, which is designed to be a highly accurate long range, really high recoil with a big charge time weapon, that there's too many contradictions in that. The scrambler kind of got it about right, and I would actually offer if you mimicked the charge mechanic from the scrambler into the rail rifle, you'd be a lot better off. Like if you just pulled the trigger,
Absolutely.
rounds came out and it was all good. But if you hold the trigger, you get like a 3-round burst or something like that out of the rail rifle,
or an overcharged rail shot.
Yeah, that's a ton more legit, and it's a hell of a lot easier to balance because you've already got basically the scrambler model to work off of.
When you charge, the first shot gives you extra damage.
Sure, yeah, I think there's way better ways to do it, but Braken's point is accurate.
And the thing is, I'm only expanding on something Kane said. Another thing that he said that I fully agree with is having a tack version of a weapon, having an assault version of a weapon, having a burst version of a weapon is redundant.
Absolutely.
They should be toggleable. You should be able to do single fire, burst, and fully automatic on every single gun.
What it looks like, honestly, when you look at weapons, I think in a lot of ways, it seems that CCP was looking more for item count than actual functionality. It's like we want
pretty legit.
Can I please get a red dot on my plasma rifle, please?
That's, I mean, really, it's artificial content. It's like the tiering on the weapons and the modules, I can understand. There's tiering in weapons and modules in EVE, and it provides fitting variation for people who don't have the skills to rock everything out proto. But the suits having tiers, that's artificial content.
Yeah, I remember CCP saying in an advertisement that they have like hundreds of weapons.
Oh yeah, and tons of suits and all. Yeah.
No, you don't.
It's like Borderlands advertisement. We have millions of weapon variations in this game.
Well, use 5 of.
There was, if you remember correctly, there was also the thousands of maps because combinations of mood sockets and maps.
Oh dear God!
Skim junction with snow, skim junction with fire, skim junction with toxic rain,
and coming soon, skim junction with burning trees.
Oh God!
Real hype tank.
But another
completely
problem.
Different maps.
Oh yeah. But back on topic, I mean, another problem with the rifles is the fact that you've got the breech rifles and the assault versions of the rifles. And these are the two hot buttons right now because they've got the breaches at range
Ooh,
doing
yeah,
doing
that's
alpha. The
mm,
problem is
Well, look,
alpha at range matches
the
a real world battle doctrine, but it's ship battle doctrine, it's tank battle doctrine, it's like helicopter doctrine.
look. I mean,
speaking of the bridge, I like. You see, the bridge and the assault rifle have the exact, well, not the exact, but very, very similar DPS, clips, damage per clip, shit like that. Now, the thing is that the bridge has a very, very tight hipfire. So that comes back to when you were talking about handling. What makes the bridge so good is the hipfire, because
It's damage application.
more shots land. Exactly, damage application. More shots land.
The thing is if CCP wanted to make the breach weapons, perform properly, and they wanted to make the assault weapons, because let's face it, the assault rifle doesn't start being useful until 35 meters, and then you've only got 5 meters of functional range before the fall off. The easiest way to balance them out, in my opinion, I don't know if everybody agrees with me, and I know CCP probably going to ignore me, is going to be to swap the ranges on the rail rifle and the assault rail rifle, and swap the ranges on the assault rifle and the breach assault rifle. Done. Because the breach ones provide better damage in close, and the assault versions provide better damage coverage at range.
I'm not really sure the normal rail rifle needs the range enough.
No. The assault rail rifle's shorter range. You'd make the rail rifle the shorter range one, and make the assault
I'm not
variants
sure
the longer range.
The standard rail rifle needs a range enough.
But the thing is that it's overperforming in CQC, and that's why they're nerfing it the way that they are. That's not working out very well. It's always going to overperform in CQC. That's the problem.
Well, they did increase the hipfire dispersion and shit like that, but people are saying that's too much. So they took that down and then added the charger.
Right, but we're bumping into the same problem that we've always been bumping into with the HMG. Trying to shoehorn it into a point blank, fire weapon is not working out very well.
The thing is that the rail rifle still worked in CQC, it just wasn't 100% effective.
Yeah.
People just bitched, in my opinion.
Don't get me started.
In my opinion.
There should be no weapon that's useless at any range. It's that simple.
It wasn't useless, it just was less effective.
I'm more referring to the 0.6 charge time now.
Yeah, 6, the charge up is a bit ridiculous. I mean, when I encounter a rail rifle, what I do is just run from cover to cover and they can never hit me.
I think I ran Kane under here too, so
Yeah.
I think he had something to say.
Yeah, Kane, were you up?
Oh, I'm good now.
Okay. Yeah, I would, just as a general comment, I would actually rather I don't entirely agree with Braken's theory, but I think there's definitely some threads of merit in there. And one thing I would offer is that the rail rifle, I think, would be a better trade-off to lower its damage per shot significantly and drop the charge time off the thing, and keep it at the lowest in class DPS, but make it true DPS, not the bullshittery that you have to do with the charge mechanic and
I
calculate the DPS.
I've been using the rail rifle since it came out. The charge mechanic really never bothered me. Actually,
it will now.
Well,
because it used to be as long as the human reaction time. It wasn't that much.
No, I use the assault rail rifle.
Here's the thing.
Some of that.
Again, it goes back to the weapon design and weapon concept. The rail rifle beefs could have quickly been dealt with. They could have actually left it at the 0.2 charge time when it first came out if they had made one simple change. If the charge mechanic was the same as the small rail turret, where if you try to come off of the trigger, you incur a charge penalty. You balk on the trigger, and now it triples your charge time for the next shot. That would have solved a ton of this. Or again, you go back to something more akin to the scrambler. So again, I see the points on all this, but I'm also the guy that I went well over 2.6 million SP on day one with the rail rifle, and I've been using it as my primary in either the standard or the assault variant the whole time, when I'm not playing heavy anyway. And that's the number one thing that I could tell you about it is they're picking the wrong things to try to shape the weapon around. I'll buy the whole longest range equals lowest DPS thing all day long. Absolutely down with that. I'll totally buy that hip fire should be noticeably less accurate than ADS, but the ADS needs to be absolutely balls on, tack driving accurate. And that's the trick with the weapon. Like when they got real fancy with the charge mechanics, and then messing around with like having a high recoil weapon, that doesn't work when you're trying to have an accurate long range weapon system.
Well, I can see what they were trying to do. They were trying to have it where, you know how people tap fire? So with the charge mechanic, you can't really do that. So you have to work with the recoil instead of just tap firing. That's what they were trying to do, I think.
Honestly, as far as constructive solutions to the rifle problems, I think if we were going to try and get the community and everybody like on this channel to sell an idea to Rattati, the best one would be to take what I said. Like I said, it's Kane's comment that kind of set me off, would be to kind of normalize certain weapons together, because when it boils down to it, a battle rifle is a battle rifle is a battle rifle. Battle rifles are all meant to do the same job. They should perform similarly. The details should basically boil down to play style for preference, not
Agreed.
for mathematical efficiency.
And the other thing is you have the biggest thing in there is resistances.
Yep.
Yeah, and leave the profiles the way they are, for God's sake. Those are probably the best variation to distinguish the battle rifles from one another that we could possibly have.
Problem is they're not even in game.
The profiles is why I hate the HMG.
There's so many aspects of these weapons. I mean, I think we've been clamoring for stats in game since basically forever, with range profiles and damage profiles and all that stuff. The thing is, people can't make educated decisions about what a weapon's going to do and how it's going to function if the only benefit they get, the only time in game that you can actually see how a weapon functions, is a tooltip on a loading screen. I mean,
or when you're firing it.
Yeah.
It should be on every item description, just at the very top. This is the weapon type. This is the profile. It's like 3 lines. It's a lot of work to, I guess, key it in, but it's huge when you don't have that in game.
They have a lot of fluff explaining the weapon, the lore, but they have nothing to explain its actual in-game function.
Well, you don't even have to have it as a stat on like the stat sheet. I mean, the descriptions themselves, I'm pretty sure, can be edited through Catma.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Editing the descriptions, though, is a localization issue.
Okay.
You have to.
It's mostly numbers, though.
Yeah, but you do have to run it down the whole process.
Yeah.
No,
because
I'm with
it's
you.
a language thing.
It also goes back to if you look at it, everybody in this channel. I mean, we've been playing for a while. Some of us, as long as Dust was a thing that you could actually get your hands on, in terms of like just longevity in the game. Well, what I would say is like those bits and bobs of lore and like the narrative descriptions of the weapons, that really does need to be updated, because that's all you have to go on if you're a new player, and it does have to accurately.
The still says that you can don't fire it.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the descriptions of all these weapons, like I'll tell you right now, like if you tried to sort of like remove yourself from your current level of knowledge and you just go back and actually look at the little descriptions of the weapons and the suits, you would be like, that's absolutely bullshit. That it doesn't do that. You'll find a lot of things that are like that, and that really does need to be cleaned up. In all fairness.
Yeah, it does.
I still remember the first time I actually tried the swarm launcher. I was playing remember the swarm launchers of Doom? Well, I was playing during that time, but I only tried the swarm launchers after it was fixed. And I was just trying to figure out how the hell do I downfire this thing? Because it said in the description it can.
And I've seen a lot of new players running around in matches, and someone will pull out a swarm launcher, and you can tell they're trying to shoot you, and they're wondering what the hell's going on, and then you kill them, and then like a lot of times, I bet you like half the time that person's like, well, screw this game, this is silly.
Well, here's one for you. Yep. Like Pokey just teed this up in the Skype channel, and I was laughing about it. He said, yeah, the toxin SMG doesn't do poison damage. What? And I was like, that's That's actually exactly why I bought those BPOs, like the little toxins. That was the first thing I actually put money on, because when you read the description, it 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 would clearly drive you to the thought that that weapon does damage over time.
Yeah.
Like when you hit them with a burst, there would be some lingering damage effects based on a very detailed description in the the little frame page for it. So that's a great example of that.
It's a perfect example, honestly. But I mean, I got a question
Probably
for you
the
guys.
best.
As far as like the idea of normalizing the battle rifles, we all seem to be kind of in agreement that they're way too different in function to really be called battle rifles. They're more like situation rifles.
Yeah, I'd buy that. Well, for the most part.
The combat rifle is probably the closest thing we have to a battle rifle. That is
Believe it or
works
not,
everywhere.
the scrambler rifle as well, as long as you have an Amar suit maxed.
Yes,
Yep.
I wasn't including the suits.
The Amaro assault bonus just kind of breaks the scrambler.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now that being
the-
said, that's probably the best example of racial synergy, which I think it should be a thing in the game, and I think that's a great way
Yes,
to
but-
differentiate stuff.
believe it or
Um,
not, the Amar and Minmatar bonuses are roughly the same thing. The ability to put more
Oh, yeah,
rounds on
I agree.
target before you have to worry about an overheat or
I
reloading.
do. I will.
The
I will say the
Minmatar-
MR is a little bit much, but it's the right. It is the right bonus, but maybe a little
The
bit
right
too much
idea.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
The Minmatar and Amar bonuses are very, very good. The Kaldari and Galente.
Oh, the Kaldari-
There's not
the-
much synergy.
They're
Cal-
crap.
the Caldari one's a joke. It's a joke.
I'm sorry, but reload speed, anything under 2 seconds is not worth bonusing for frickin' reload speed. You know, if you put that on an HMG, you still couldn't get the reload speed under 5 seconds. It's not worth it. But
No, I
I
anything
swear,
under,
the only reason the ion pistol is the way it is with the hipfire is because they wanted to give Galente Assaults a reason to exist.
the problem with the ion pistol is no matter how much you overcharge that thing, if you even tick that thing into the overcharge bar, you automatically overheat it, which is a problem.
Yep.
It's crap. The ion pistol is mechanically crap. It's a sidearm I would not use.
I love it. I mean, yeah, it's mechanically not very reliable, but it is quite powerful.
That's the problem.
When it hits. When it
You
hits.
just hit the nail on the head. It's not very reliable. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with a weapon in a game, it has to be reliable. It has to be counted on to function properly when you use it.
The only real problem I have right now with the ion pistol is where if you try and charge it right after the cooldown, like even if it's a millisecond before the cooldown is over, it doesn't actually fire a charge shot, but it overheats your weapon again, and it's really annoying because there is no way to avoid that.
Honestly, I would remove. If I was going to do something with the ion pistol, I would drop the headshot bonus down to baseline, up the damage so that you can punch right through somebody's chest plate, and just rock that thing out with no charge mechanic. That's what I would do with it.
When I first read about the ion pistol, I was like, oh, they made like a pistol version of the shotgun. That's exactly what I was thinking.
I'm surprised that the ion pistol mechanic isn't on the scrambler pistol, since the Amar have the whole charge shot for more damage. It feels like they wanted to do it, but then went, well, we already have a Amar pistol. We don't really want to mess with it, so we'll just give it to the Galente. And I feel it kind of breaks that racial theme. And it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
Use the ion pistol as kind of a shotgun. I mean, there are these moments where you have like 50 HP left and the enemy is around the corner with 300. You can't afford to have any time, like you can't have a drawn out fight with your rifles. You need to have that alpha damage, and that ion pistol usually saves me. It happened.
But my problem with a lot of the pistols is the fact that the utility, the overheat mechanics in general. The one thing I have a problem with all of the overheat mechanics in general is the fact that they render you completely helpless. You can't swap to a sidearm. You can't swap to a primary.
Yeah.
The overheat
that's
mechanic.
kind of the point.
No,
especially with the scrambler rifle.
the thing is you should, if you're doing a scrambler rifle and it overheats, you should be able to swap to your pistol. Drop
No.
the rifle and grab a weapon that's useful.
No, I'm
Just no.
sorry, but that'd be overpowered as hell.
Very, very much
Well,
overpowered.
let me. I'll kind of split the difference on this with you guys because I tend to fall in Cat Merc and Arkina's camp on this. However, I can see where Bricken's coming from. I think there's another thing that you could fix that would actually help you split the difference, and that's the actual animations that we have across the board in the game. Because the speed of the animations in anything, like from stabbing somebody with a nanite injector to getting out of a lab or to reloading or switching weapons in particular, like you could meter those. Like you could actually, if you could figure out a way to dynamically meter those a little bit, you could actually build a little bit more tactical options in. Because I would tell you, like if like for realsies, if I have a weapons malfunction, I literally let both hands go off the weapon and go to a secondary if I'm in the middle of a fight. Like that's exactly. I wouldn't sit there and go, "Oh God, it's hot! Oh God! Oh Jesus Christ, my hands are burning."
There's
kind
no
of way
why
I
I
would
put it that way.
That's exactly what the animation looks like.
The thing is I was a gunner. I was a machine gunner in the military. Okay, and the guns overheating was a very real problem. If the gun broke down, you didn't sit there and hold it while it burned your friggin' skin off. You had to switch to your frickin' rifle or a sidearm or what have you. Whatever you had on hand, you don't sit there and play with it while it incinerates you.
Like I think a very legit thing is to slow down the weapon switch animation, speed up the nanite injector, sacrificial stab to the heart, and incredibly slow down the sentinels getting out of teleporting out of a lav. If you could do those things, you would actually, that's like a big quality of life upgrade to a lot of things in Dust. Yeah, absolutely.
Believe it or not, the sentinels teleporting out of the lab was the reason behind my sentinel battle roll proposal. It was actually the thing that kind of started me down the path of why I wanted to take them out of CQC.
Oh yeah, you're the one who made that proposal. I forgot about that.
Yes, I was. And a lot of people still think to this day that I was trolling.
Yes.
You're kind of like that, Low, sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what? I find that
if
you can get people so that they can't tell whether you're serious or trolling, even when you are being dead serious, you're doing it right.
Man, something with the vehicles, like the getting in and out, like the vehicle lock.
I have seen a suggestion where you do the hack animation whenever you try to get in a vehicle. It's like for 3 seconds, 2 seconds, something like that.
No, it doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be 2 or 3 seconds. It just needs to be, if any of you have ever played Destiny, you go up to a vehicle and you kind of
that's a second, but the vehicles in Destiny are slightly more open than LAVs.
I just desperately want to see some like Jabba the Hutt, fucking Galente heavy, trying to waddle his ass out of a lab and like the suspension rocking. He falls over.
Hell yeah.
He's on his back.
Hell yeah.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah.
Like
Homer Simpson trying to be an
idea how much
acrobat.
I want to see.
just
that.
rips off the. You can just see it now. A Galente Sentin being in a Caldari lab and just ripping off the door as he tries to get out.
I mean, it would give like Dukes of Hazzard a whole new level of meaning in Dust.
Oh, absolutely.
And you see the scout that came out of the LAV just a moment ago getting crushed under the AV that fell down.
Oh, you see like these little legs sticking out, wiggling.
So, do you want to know how I was not trolling with the Sentinel battle roll thing at all?
Absolutely. Wait. Okay. All right. Here's the deal.
You actually wanted them to be removed completely.
No, the thing was when. One of the things that me and Kane have discussed in the past was when when heavies used to have the turn speed penalty, it didn't really bother either one of us. When it started bothering me was when they chopped down the range of the HMG to CQC only. Because it meant people could run around in circles around you and shoot you in the side of the head.
I actually checked the SD, and apparently the Assault HMG has the same range as the Assault Rifle, just that none of the bullets hit.
It does, and yes, you're absolutely right. But the whole point of my proposal is take the Sentinels out of CQC and Kane disagrees with me mostly on the strength of the Amar laser. Unfortunately, Kane, I'm still going to take the stance of it doesn't exist,
I just
so I
think
can't consider it.
anything that's effective at long range is going to be effective in CQC
Yep.
unless you use a laser function in which its damage falls off as you get closer to the user.
But my point would be to reintroduce
wide
the
hip fire
old
dispersion.
turn. My point would be to reintroduce the old turn speed penalty as a thing, so that you could still run around a sentinel and shoot him in the side of the head when you got close.
Dude,
It's just
people are
getting
gonna burn you at
close
the
was the
stake if
difficulty
you.
part.
People are gonna burn you at the stake if you bring that shit back.
I wouldn't put it on the sentinel suits though.
Wait,
You
on the
put it on the
HMG then?
weapon. You put it
I'll
on the
buy that.
HMGs itself.
How about that?
That
Wait,
way,
bring what back?
the turn penalties. But you only put it on the
Oh.
weapons. You remember how
if you did it, you could not do it to the level it was. You would
No.
have to lower it.
You'd have to lower it, but you could put it enough that say an assault, if he got within 10 meters or 15 meters of you, would be able to keep at least a pace. So if you didn't have him locked
If I remember
immediately,
correctly, plates still do that. They still
No, they
reduce your
don't.
turn.
nope.
Nope.
Turn speed is
Right.
unaffected by movement speed.
Okay.
Arcana, didn't we test that a while ago?
I was under the impression that the results showed that there was no effect.
Huh.
So
Yeah. Sentinels
I
turn
think-
at the same speed as scouts, and which turn at the same speed as assaults.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw a video that Moody did that showed that. Yeah, I don't think there's a difference now. I think it's all.
No,
even.
it's all dependent on the control scheme that you're using, how fast you turn.
Now,
And
go ahead.
Mouse and keyboard master race.
Yeah, there you go.
no, actually, I've looked at it. If you really want smooth and quick turning, use the DS3, and both
What?
control schemes just suck.
I actually remember with the scanner nerf, I saw, like a few days after it was released, a Galogi doing a 1,000 degree turn with a scanner. He was using a mouse
That's
and
totally
keyboard.
legit.
Yes, in the
I want to know
small
how
time
he
frame.
did that.
In the small time frame where the scanner is active, he did a 1,000 degree turn.
That's insane.
It's all right. Now,
That's like maximum DPI.
I will offer this, that I do disagree with the idea of taking Sentinels out of the CQC role, just for practical purposes. Like, you can, it's really easy to say that you want people to be able to like move fast and be very agile, but like for real, like when it's tight quarters, it's just better to tank and give damage. So
Really, the problem with that philosophy, while it is better to tank and give damage, the primary attack suit should be an assault. The primary suit that should be shining in CQC is the assault.
See, and there we go
Sentinels-
back to vision, where
no.
you have
The thing
people
is
debating what it's for and why it's for that. And,
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah,
the assault
thing
itself,
is-
the big problem with the assault is that since Dust began, almost everyone's been saying it's the jack of all trades. But most of the time, they also want to drop the master of none part.
I'm inclined to think of I've never really outright said this. I'm inclined to think of the assault as your mainline infantry. Okay, if that makes sense. Your mainline infantry. Sentinel, as far as I'm concerned, and I've been playing a Sentinel since the beginning of Chromosome. It's been my baby. As far as I'm concerned, Sentinel's an assault. It's not a mainline infantry, it's a support. It's built like a support rig. It's absolutely, everything about it is built like a support thing. But every disadvantage that it has, the low mobility, the sensor blindness, is negated by CQC. Everything.
Right, but that's I think where it's supposed to work well, and it tends to work really well.
That's mostly because of the DPS of the HMG.
Yeah, no shit.
If you no, literally. If
With
you the more you drop the DPS and extend the range of the HMG, I guarantee you're going to see a reversal of this. Sentinels are going to become more useful at range and less useful in CQC. It's just the nature of the beast. It's the nature of the HMG. The weapon is dictating the role, not the suit.
I just think one of the problems that CCP always comes into with the Sentinels is that it's so tied to the HMG because CCP never got around to releasing any other weapon variants on the heavy slot, and so you basically all CCP has to work with is the HMG, and getting it to work. They're like, well, you end up with people, when you modify that, you have an entire class of people who are like, no, don't do this, don't do that type of deal, rather than having options to go to.
I
There
just
are no
did a
options.
calculation against armor with the proficiency and armor bonus. The HMG does 1,100 DPS.
Huge
Cut a
fan.
quarter of that off the
Huge
top.
fan.
Cut a quarter of that off the top for applied DPS unless your barrel's touching the target.
Yeah,
but
that's true, but still, that's...
I don't. Yeah, but I don't think that doesn't. Again, we go back to this. Is it logical? Does it make sense? The reality
doesn't.
is, like, here's the thing. Like a machine gun like that, like a weapon system like that, if it touches you, it's kind of like a fucking chainsaw. Like that's how that works. Like for real. And I like the idea of having a lot of dispersion. It's very difficult to control, maybe, but it works really good either mounted on a lav. And that's actually what I really think that they should have done, is went with whatever you can mount on a lav is what the heavy carries. And if you'd
that would make sense, wouldn't
something like that, like you could have worked it out pretty well, I think. But I mean, it's a yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. That's basically what a forge gun is, if you think about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue there. I'm not going to argue there.
Speaking of things that don't make sense within the context of the game, damage mods should not be giving you bonus damage to both sides of the profile when profile is a basic thing.
Well, now, yeah, I mean, the way we deal damage in the game generally is one that, like, the thing I've always kind of wondered about is weapon proficiency as a skill. Okay, so I like to think I'm pretty good utilizing, like in the real world, like for realsies. I'm actually pretty good with this, and no matter how well I train, I can't make the bullet hit you any harder. I can be more accurate. I can choose my engagement better, but the bullet is the bullet. And so I really think they need to change how that works.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to have to agree with you there. I've fired just about every possible type of weapon that you can imagine. I can do 9 out of 10 at 500 meters with an M16 on iron sights. I can't make the bullet hit harder.
Well, this all also comes into question too of lore versus game mechanics. Like what is real? Like I've heard the argument before of real life versus a game, right? And what's to say that any skill that you train gives you better understanding of how the weapon works, so that you're more efficient with it, like a surgical strike kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I can buy that.
Yeah, you buy that to a point, yeah. But when
I
you're
always
shooting
just
someone in
assumed
the
it was
foot,
technical, that it was a merc knowing how to modify their gun a little bit here and there.
Yeah, okay, I can kind of buy that.
that would be something buying, but they'd need to put that into the description.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, like,
does it matter so much?
Not really, and I think Arcane is right. Like, that's where I was going with it. At the end of the day, it's not Call of Duty. It's designed to be a science fiction game now, so you have to suspend some belief on some things. Now, I don't think you need to suspend logic, but you can suspend, some level of belief on some areas. So,
generally, Call of Duty, it's actually doing the power armor thing better than Dust.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Now, the question is this brings back up to a thing where I made a point and Kane actually made a better point because he had a better handle on it. What's Dust trying to be? Is it trying to be an action shooter, more like Destiny, or is it trying to be a tactical shooter?
It is trying to be a free-to-play-to-win game. How about that?
It's going to be like Sandbox.
Like, no shit. Like, the first thing I noticed when I fired up, like early this week when I came back and I fired up the game, like, I remember the whole, hey, buy Orem and, get there faster kind of thing that was sort of in the background. Every time I turned around, there was, like, some digital, like, floozy sticking her hand out for more fucking Orem. So that's the first thing I noticed.
And now you have your digital floozy asking you for Orem.
Well, like we talked about last week. Hi, by the way, I'm sorry I'm late. This is lethargic.
No problem.
Like we talked about last week, is that it was very important for any free-to-play game to have a good monetization model, and it's really good that CCP is actually building a healthier model in which that their free-to-play game can support more revenue income, so that they can develop their game further.
Absolutely, I'll agree. There's nothing wrong with the company trying to make money. they didn't do enough of it, and they weren't trying to do it the right way originally, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so we're on the same page then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I
The
don't
thing is
disagree.
the
They need to
Quaif-
make money. Yeah.
The Quaif BPOs, the Apex suits, they're excellent ideas. They need to go with things that are of similar veins, things that don't break the game but provide a useful function. And so far, they're doing a fair job of it. It's just they need to include the options. Not everything has to be a BPO, and I don't necessarily encourage everything
Just
to be a
in the
BPO.
future, I would recommend that they actually talk with the community before they release the stuff. I mean, the Quaif is nothing to worry about, but the
Some of the
Apex
fits on
suits,
the Apex suits
we
are heinous.
never. Yeah, but with the Apex suits, we never had any warning. By the time Ratati said anything about it, it was about to be released.
Which
No, we had warning. It was just not very clear what we were getting warning of.
That's not a warning then.
No,
Well,
he
you have
just
to-
said you'll see on Monday.
Well, there's also a time frame issue with a whole lot of this, and as much as I am a devout believer in communication, it's what I've been ranting about since closed beta, there are certain things within the real world context of business where you simply cannot have that feedback loop. There is not time, that's just reality.
Something
Yeah.
else to consider as well is that a possible reason that they're not talking to us as much as we would like them to is possibly because of the fact that they're going to release us a certain kind of content. We may not understand why or its purpose, and we may think it's game breaking, but there's probably another reason for it. Like there's going to be content that they can't talk about immediately, but they can talk about this content, but it supports each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's just it's a matter of transmitting what's like how things snap together in sort of a roadmap style discussion. But no, that's actually a good point.
So the CPM, I think somebody on the CPM asked a question a while back. I think it was Iron Wolf Saber about his vehicle thread that seemed to go nowhere. He was looking for feedback on.
Well, he put it in GD.
Yeah, that was his first mistake. But as far as the vehicle feedback thing, one of the questions that he asked was, would people accept, having the Amar and Minmatar vehicles using art assets that are repainted appropriately?
Yes.
Let's be blunt here. We've been missing the content for so long. There's nobody in their right mind is going to go, no, I'm going to hold out for the perfect visual representation.
Don't
no,
True
that's-
adamance
that's-
will. True adamance will.
My perfection.
You know what? True adamance is one person out of how many accounts?
But
No, I totally agree with you, man.
there's
Yeah,
there's
no,
so
sure.
many
Should
things.
did say that he does want the repainted holes.
I understand that CCP wants to make their stuff special and they want to have everything, have a visual representation, and I respect this. But we're at the point where, reusing the art assets to introduce new content isn't going to exactly piss the player base off.
No.
Speaking of, we
Hey, guys,
could use
whoa.
existing art assets for heavy weapons.
Give me a quick second, guys. So I hate to break in, but I actually need to jet here in a couple seconds. I wanted to give a quick shout out and then literally just kind of throw the red meat back to the audience and let you guys kind of continue the discussion on what I'm now euphemistically referring to as the Breaking Mast show. So we're gonna have to excise Breaking so that he can have his own show and just a running monologue all day that I can listen to in my car when I'm driving around. It's fucking awesome. So in all seriousness, I really do need to get going, but I did want to give a quick shout out to the team here. Everybody that joined us today, Lethargic, thanks for coming in. I know you came in a little bit late. Appreciate it. Arkina, Breakin, Catmerk, Cross, Kane, Pokey, Sraya. I appreciate everybody coming on the show today. I really do. It was pretty cool to actually put voices to a lot of the names that I've been reading in Skype and on the forum. So I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun to be back on the show after a little bit of a hiatus, but I did want to give a shout out to Agony Unleashed on my way out. They've got a roam later today, an NPSI roam in Eve, so join up over in Stackmon if you want to this afternoon. And other than that, a quick shout out to the Best of Us channel in Eve, and you can actually access it from your Dust client as well. It's basically a channel for veterans, for military veterans. It doesn't matter what country you're from. It's just a very it's not a lot of in-game discussion. It's just kind of a place where vets go and kind of hang out that play the game. So play CCP games in general. So did want to give that a quick shout out. So on that note, guys, I really do have to get going, and I'm gonna leave it in Pokey and Zell's capable hands. And again,
Capable.
I have to throw him a bone, man. You got to work with me. So but I do appreciate letting me involved in the discussion today, and thanks a lot. So I got to get jetting, guys.
Good luck and good hunting.
Catch you later, Jay.
Goodbye.
Grab a squad sometime this week.
Absolutely, I'll try to catch you guys.
All right, so back to what we were talking about with the vehicle variants. I mean, I've been pushing that thread pretty hard for a while. What?
Not just the vehicles, everything from sniper rifle style, all the precision weapons that we need, all of the suppression weapons that we need, all of the heavy weapons that we need, everything could be used on reused art assets.
At the same time, adding things, what has to be avoided is adding things for the sake of adding things.
No, I'll agree. I will agree.
I think we need to look at what we're missing in the tactical gameplay sense.
Yeah, and in areas like, okay, because we don't have this asset and this asset, these variants, how is that affecting our ability to actually balance properly and that sort of thing?
Right.
Heavy weapons.
2 heavy weapons, 2 racial profiles of vehicles. There's a couple miscellaneous light weapons. I mean, let's face it, the Amar selection of weapons is anemic.
There is also a lack of anti-shield weaponry that can actually hit dropships.
That's kind of where the Galent and the Amar heavy weapons would fall in, as well as as a not a Galent, but an Amar light weapon meant for AV, as well as a Minmatar weapon for punching armor. We're still missing those.
I do imagine a Marian AV would be like a laser that just
absolutely. And the thing is with the Amar AV, you could either repurpose the forge gun model and paint it gold, or you could use the laser rifle model and make it bigger, or what have you.
Old forge gun.
Yeah, well, I prefer the idea of painting the forge gun model gold, but that's because it looks like a heavy weapon.
How hard it is to just modify existing models, like not create new ones, just modify existing models.
They've done
elongate stuff and stuff like that.
Anytime you change a mesh, that's going to be an issue. But if you're just changing a skin, like they've shown with suits, that can be done.
I know
via
about skins.
hotfixes.
I know about suits. I'm just talking about meshes.
That's the thing is anytime you start adjusting the mesh, you can start bumping into problems, and the poly count's going to by necessity change.
This is making me remember back in the day remember if you switched weapons too fast, you would end up with hybrid weapons.
Yeah. The thing is,
assault rifle SMG.
If you start, let's use this as an example. I've actually used Maya, and I can't imagine 3ds Max is much different. When you take a model that you've actually got solid and you've got the poly count set, you've removed all of the extraneous polys that you don't need in order to keep the rendering load down. If you start stretching that out, you can create visual artifacting where you will start seeing through the weapon. You will start seeing the texture go into some bizarre and unnatural configuration. You will have the visual effect of the weapon look like it's folding back in on itself, or something equally stupid. The problem with changing the meshes is the fact that you have to change the poly count in order to account for those changes.
Well, what's the problem?
Depending on how big the changes are, anywhere from a full work day to alter the poly count to having to rebuild it from scratch. So we're better off just doing palette swaps, which take 20 minutes. I mean, that's more reasonable to ask for.
Yeah, I was just wondering how feasible it would be to change the meshes. I wasn't aware that it could actually require rebuilding the weapon.
Yeah. Generally, when I was messing around with Maya, because of the nature of the beast, anytime I tried to change the mesh, I usually wound up having to rebuild it from zero.
Oui.
Now, there are better people who are much better at modifying those than I am, and I'm just an amateur. But the thing is anytime you change it, not only do you have to change it, but then you've got to go and render it and re-render it. You got to find where all the fail points are and re-render it. Then you got to stick it in the game on a client and test it, see how it performs in the game. Does the charge mechanic show up correctly? Does the weapon try to fold in on itself and turn into a giant pink dildo magically when the forge gun charge accidentally gets applied to it?
That might sell depending on who you're talking to.
Shh, let's not pick on them too much.
All right, guys. I don't want to. In the sake of time, I think we should probably move on. I think it's a pretty lengthy topic. We'll hit it at a different time. But Zell wanted to mention a few things about the equipment bandwidth concept that's been rolling around. I know Cross is here. He's pretty big on the lodging stuff, so it might be a good topic to go into. So, Zell, do you want to head that up?
No. Okay. So basically, the equipment bandwidth thing is going to set how many things you can have deployed logistics-wise to your suit. So if you switch suits, you will lose things down to the bandwidth of your new suit if it's lower than your previous suit.
Starting with the old stuff first.
And it's also it's going to prevent the ability to just constantly switch suits and drop like piles of gear. I think there was a thread in the war room where someone had like spelled out GGFA with uplinks and nanohives, and I just responded with a link to the equipment bandwidth thread and fixed.
See, I think the favorite uplink spam I ever saw is someone drew a giant arrow pointing to the objective on a domination map with uplinks.
Yeah.
Oh, that might actually get the blueberries to do something.
I think that was the idea.
Exactly.
So will this prevent people from stacking different types of uplinks to deploy a lot of them, or is it just to prevent the suit swapping?
You can't stack uplinks of different types either over a certain, like, each suit is going to have a hard number, a hard concept of this is how many items that this suit can have deployed actively, and nothing more will be able to, anything more you deploy will destroy your oldest equipment.
That makes me also think of maybe increasing, like giving lodges increased equipment carry amount, like give a 100% bonus to how much equipment you carry.
There's a reason why I keep saying that Cross's proposals that he's been bouncing back and forth and taking to Ritati are compatible with the bandwidth changes, because Cross's ideas actually are compatible with one of the things that Ritati said, is where we want to make the lodges not only be able to carry more, but better quality.
Yes.
It's almost like the guy talks to me on occasion.
I know, it's kind of creepy. And it's amazing how many people don't consider that when they're looking at what Ritati's saying, and then they're looking at your thing here, and they're assuming that because we're doing bandwidth, your proposal has been thrown out the window somehow.
Impossible.
What's a cooperating? Impossible!
Exactly.
Players and devs do not cooperate. They fight.
To the death. Finish.
You what, mate? Fight me, IRL.
Ritati declined my challenge. I'm very sad.
Yes.
I would decline your challenge too, because I'm bored.
So is the bandwidth a set value for the suit, or does it increase with skill?
Set value for the suit based on meta level.
Yes. Proto-logis get like 32 bandwidth, and an uplink costs 4.
That simplifies a
lot
of the
bullshit. All numbers currently fake, but yeah.
Okay, so equipment is not created the same in terms of bandwidth cost.
I think one thing, though, looking at that bandwidth proposal, though, I almost feel that we should try to avoid introducing any more tiering into the environment. And so I think like all lodges, like whether it's basic, proto, or advanced, should actually have the same bandwidth.
Thought of like taking this opportunity to give standard and advanced lodges the same amount of equipment slots as the prototype versions. Because as it stands right now, a standard logi is like a scout has 2 equipment, and a standard logi has 2 equipment as well. So
the Minotaur has 3, but no, you're right. The tiering, we don't need to introduce more tiering. Quite frankly,
we could introduce the equipment bandwidth tiering, but give the STD and advanced logis the same amount of equipment slots.
The worry worry I have with doing tiering on suits is like you have. You see a lot of situations in which a battle starts going poorly, so people start switching into less expensive gear to try to mitigate their losses, right? So a Logi switching from a proto Logi to a basic Logi, all of a sudden like their equipment's popping, even though they're actually still in a Logi suit. I just don't think that's necessarily good design.
Kane, since when do people care about disc?
When they're not Kane or people who've been harvesting PC money.
I've been harvesting spleens from red berries.
That's because spleens taste better than ISK does, damn you.
An interesting thing to think about is that bandwidth should probably be scaled with the number of equipment the suit can equip, right? So if you've got 3 slots, you need less bandwidth than if you've got 4 slots. So in that regard, you almost kind of have to have a tiering, so it makes sense in terms of how much equipment you can carry, unless they all have the same amount, which is what you were saying, where all Logis get the prototype level of equipment carrying rather than the scaling factor we have now.
Screw it, let's just tier aside the suits. It makes more sense that way.
Oh, I wish.
Yes.
Yeah.
I keep looking at the Apex suits.
Tier aside everything.
See,
Oh my god, those could have been such a great opening for removing the different tiers of suits.
I think honestly, probably don't want to get off too far off subject from the bandwidth thing. It's just, give all suits, don't change the slots, give everyone the same slot layout. Just, it's your grid and CPU is what the variance is.
Well, let's face it, scouts don't need as much bandwidth for deployables as, say, a Logi does. Let's face it, most people are going to run under the expectation that a scout's going to carry a cloak and REs.
Well, yes, their bandwidth is 12 and assaults is 16, so...
I actually gave Soraya a bit of a scare when I started saying that Sentinels need to have 0 bandwidth, because he was like, wait, I didn't see Sentinels in the proposal anywhere? Where are you seeing this?
You sounded like there was a panicked need for this to be fixed.
You know what?
And so I agreed with you, and I'm like, okay. And then I realized the proposal was already that way.
You see, the problem is if it's not actually written down, that always leads an area open to interpretation. So that's one of the things, like, it'd be really nice on that spreadsheet to be like Sentinel bandwidth 0.
Yeah, the Sentinels the same bandwidth as logistics. See the forums cry.
No.
God, no. Fuck. There's no way that ends well.
They're easily scared. You have to be careful. Someone raised actually a pretty good point though about the scouts, and that supposedly the reason scouts had 2 equipment, which I'm not a fan of, but supposedly the reason is that they need to carry the cloak. So what you can do is, if you keep their bandwidth really low, you can kind of force them to only really use one of those slots for deployables, and then something else, which is it's kind of an interesting side effect that I kind of like.
I think it's fine because I've also run Scout for a while, and you can run one proto uplink, and that's not going to kill your bandwidth, and then you can run a scanner or something like that. It doesn't necessarily need to be the whole Scout doing everything as well as every other suit, and also people moonlighting in roles. I think is one of the things bandwidth addresses pretty well. The whole point is it's not going to be what's the point of having a Logi on the field if all you have to do is have somebody spam a whole bunch of equipment at the beginning of a match and then switch to a Sentinel and then
marginalizes Logi and removes the need for them.
Say you have a squad of 6 assaults, just everybody pick a different equipment. So you basically have a Logi within the squad without actually having a Logi.
Yeah, but the thing is with the bandwidth change is what most of the Logi players who claim to be habitual Logi players, and I'm getting a lot of them complaining about the fact that they're stuck as a Logi, so that tells me that there's a lot of tourism going on there.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things that the bandwidth is going to do is it is going to change Logis in such a way that a good Logi who is willing to field proto is going to be more valuable than anything else on the field, because you're going to have someone who's dedicated to the role, who knows what they're doing, and can deploy and upkeep your stuff.
Speaking of the tourism, I actually suggested a module that increases your bandwidth. So say you switch to a combat suit, if you put a few modules on it...
No, make it equipment.
you can keep a bit of the equipment, just not all of it, unless you
Well, you
just
can
No,
already
no,
keep
no.
a bit of the
Make
equipment,
it.
especially at proto level.
No. If you want to do what you're suggesting there, dude, make it equipment.
No, make it like an equipment slot. Like it's
Yes. Make it a passive equipment
Huh.
slot item. That way you
Interesting.
still do not get sentinels bypassing the need to have somebody else supporting them.
Very interesting. Yeah, I didn't actually think of sentinels.
Yeah, there's some very serious concerns where sentinels are involved anytime you start fucking with slot items. Because they've already got a really weird niche, and letting people continue doing the rooftop forging by supporting themselves and then being allowed to spawn on the same spot with you.
Sentinels can have their slots removed and they will still be quite effective. I mean, that's why the militia heavy thing is quite popular.
The militia heavy thing is quite popular because you get some of the effect at a minimal cost. That's pretty much the cost is the popularity factor.
Some of
there.
it, I'd say 70%.
Yeah, the thing is the militia is a heavy frame. It doesn't actually get the sentinel bonuses to resistance.
Good point. You could always just use a standard suit.
You use the militia frames because you use the militia sentinel because you want to save money, not because you want efficiency.
I guess that's where standard suits come in.
Yep, pretty much.
I'm not so convinced that there needs to be a way, like every time that CCP comes up with proposals, like, okay, we want to do bandwidth to do this, this, and this. I don't think we necessarily right off the gun have to say, well, let's create a way for people to bypass it as well, or to mitigate it. I think, sometimes it's good to just have something be established and just let it be almost,
Yeah, I get really nervous when you
I'm
start
certainly not in
agree.
favor of a module like that being in game right off the hop. If it's shown to be potentially useful or necessary later, when this has been in the game for a month or two, then that's a discussion worth having. But
Yeah,
planning
I'm not
for it
saying
out of the
realistic
game,
instantly, I'm just having the ball rolling on the discussion.
The other question on that one is going to be who's it more valuable to? A logistics suit, who would be the one that we'd want to target for something like that, or to say the scout, which has proven to be a problem.
well, and then there's also the question of module effect on performance, because as much as all of my personal testing has shown no correlation, apparently CCP has internal numbers that show that there is a correlation, which means that game-wide, part of what wants to happen is bring down the total number of deployables on the field, full stop. Which means that any module like that dilutes the bandwidth proposal is probably a bad call, because anything that makes it so more suits can have more stuff out than the proposal is counterproductive to part of the goal.
Yeah.
Well,
fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough.
So one of the nice things that isn't really seeming to make it onto the forums that a couple people have brought up but has seemingly been brushed completely off as useful is the fact that logistic suits, if you are a dedicated logi and you go out, you lay out all your equipment up to your maximum, your bandwidth, you can switch to another logistics fit with the same bandwidth cost. And instead of being running deployables, you can be running your rep tool, your scanner, your needle, and all of your other support things, and then swap back and forth without losing any of your deployables that you've thrown out.
Just imagine if you had a proto BPO somehow.
I wonder where that could come into play as useful. Nope, clearly this is not going to happen. So I guess we're going to have to move along, right? Right.
Another thing I like about the bandwidth concept is it's a standing concept we have in Eve with deployables being drones, and that each drone has a cost, and you can only have so many out of varying types based off the ship's bandwidth. And I think it's good that while people say Dust isn't Eve,
gives me another idea.
Yeah, I like the fact that we can take an Eve concept that is shown to work and make it applied to Dust in an effective way. So I think the more ways to make that correlation between the two and actually have it work in a reasonable manner is really good. So I'm glad to see this kind of concept, because I think it's pretty solid. What's your idea, Kat?
Yeah, for a second I thought maybe we should, like, there's bandwidth and then there's drone storage. I don't remember what it's called. Maybe have something similar, so logistics would have more equipment, and then I realized, oh yeah, they have more slots. So never mind.
Yeah, well, logistics are both something that need buffing and something that need watching. The bandwidth thing puts some limitations on them, but I think if a lot of Karas's ideas get used by Rattati, as far as buffing the logistics, especially your idea about
Can I
normalizing
get a
one
link
thing
to
between the
that?
commandos. I'll share that with you here in a bit, or somebody else will. Uh, One of the things that has been proposed that seems to have some serious promise for like commandos that noise has been made about including in Logis too, as far as the survivability, is cranking up, basically dialing their rep capacity and their recovery capacity up to 11. So basically making logistics and commandos the ones who recover from fights faster than everybody else.
I don't know, because
Well, within the frame lines. Like, logistics would be recovering faster than assaults, commandos would be recovering faster than sentinels, and there's going to be some overlap, like game-wide, but it's not meant to be necessarily either of them is the last word in recovery, full stop. That's more fine-tuning of
with
balance.
recovery, if you
One-
give logistics better recovery than assaults, you're treading a dangerous line.
No.
No,
I call total bullshit on that.
Catmerk, the Cal logistics
depends.
became the Slayer Logi phenomenon. The Cal logistics and the Galent logistics became the Slayer Logi solely because they were only 100 points behind the Sentinels for EHP. Not because of the recovery bonus, because it was only 5 hit
Sentinels?
points per second. Yeah, they were only about 200 hit points behind Sentinels at the time.
Yeah, it was never the Logi reps, and it was never all the Logi suits. It was a lot more specific, and the blanket
No,
community
I am
response
aware
and
of that.
blanket
I'm
nerfs
saying
were just
that-
terrible.
I'm not saying that it was the reason, though it did help. I'm just saying
Well,
that
Logis shouldn't have less EHP, which is not the same thing as HP, just so that we're completely clear on that. They should not have less EHP than an assault. They shouldn't be able to stand and deliver fire as an assault can, but they shouldn't just be their squishy cousins who always get rolled when a fight happens. Now,
Yeah.
you can give the assault damage that outpaces the Logi, and that's fine, and that's as it should be. But the notion in a game that is combat based, where support actions are not directly applicable to combat in most scenarios, cannot have a context where a given role is not viable to survive in combat. A Logi can't do its job when it's dead. So a Logi that doesn't have EHP that is combat viable is useless.
Yeah, I never said
Yeah.
that. I do think Logis need their speed increased even above assault levels, because
Believe it or not, that's not off the table. The
as I
speed
run-
increase for Logis is not off the table.
As I ran with Arcana today, he was a Logi, and
I was slower than Cat because he
Well, it's
touches
one,
her.
it's one of the reasons that in
Yes.
some situations the scout's actually a better Logi, because he can actually keep up with, like, say, I've seen people run reppers on a scout, repair tool on a scout, and the scout actually does a better job of it because they can actually follow the fat suit around better.
Oh yeah.
yeah, and
Well,
that
that's
is why
true of
I
high
feel
physics
like
as well.
the Minotaur Logi being a very, very good mobile ambulance.
Yeah, the Minotaur
Because-
Logi is the only one that really does it well.
I just imagine
Yes.
a Minotaur suit with like the red and blue lights on its shoulders as it's running around the battlefield.
We need one. Tell Rattati that this needs to be a
Forum.
reskin.
This needs to happen.
Yep, this needs to be a BPO reskin.
As a-
Yep, we need to have a Sisters of Eve. We need to have Sisters of Eve Logi suits.
That actually is
Make
not
you
too
do the
bad.
sound too.
It's actually not a bad idea.
I would love to
Because
see
of the
additional
sound.
faction suits beyond the four nations, pirates,
Yeah.
Sisters of Eve, stuff like that.
The problem with the pirate suit, the pirates, we need to unscrew a lot of this stuff before we start including the pirate suits. I
We
love
need to
the
unscrew stuff
idea.
before we screw stuff again.
Yeah, because remember how you've seen how much of a problem balance wise that they've had with pirate bonusing in Eve.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how fun do you think it's going to be to deal with the nerf bat and buff bat with pirate bonusing on two different drop suit skills for dust?
Yeah, well, I think people get caught up in we want all these things and we want them now, and it's like you really have to take a more phase approach to it. Like, okay, what's the most important right now? What's the most important after
but-
that? What comes after
but
that?
I got
Here's
I got a lot of flack for that today, yesterday on the forums, because someone came up and made their post linking all the slides from FanFest 2013 is like, so when are all these things coming? And I'm like, that was a pretty much completely different development team, and there's a ton of things that are more, useful for the game design, and it's like, but racial parity, and I'm like, but good gameplay.
But Brandon,
True Adamance, of course, was a part of that thread, as you can imagine.
Of course.
Look, the stuff that Brandon said cannot be taken. Like, you can't. Oh man, that was just like, yeah.
I'm gonna sum up the problems with the forums right now. The Dust player community has unrealistic expectations of the dev team. Unfortunately, these unrealistic expectations have been fed by premature promises and unrealistic assessments of what could be done.
Don't forget the lack of communication, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when the dev team says something, when the dev teams... Yeah, well, when the devs team says something and they don't provide a context for that something, then you get the crystal balling and the assumptions, and then everybody gets excited about something that was completely different from what they were expecting, and boo-hoo, we've got more bitching on the forums. So.
Right, but the point with the 2013 FanFest stuff is that it's a complete, I don't think they were technically promises to begin with, because I heard, but CCP promised this like 4 times on that thread.
No, they didn't promise anything. They said this is what we're hoping to put
have MTech's early 2013.
Yeah, right. And the it's a different dev team. You don't necessarily, if one team does a bad job, the next team doesn't come in and say, okay, we're going to do exactly what the other team was doing. And anything that was made as even if it was a promise, anything said by, a previous team is not going to be indicative of what the current direction is.
So Wolfman said that we're going to have this. I'm sorry, Rattati's not Wolfman. I'm going to agree with you there, much as it pains me to agree with you on anything.
I'm sorry.
I'm actually glad Rattati's not Wolfman.
You've got that bottle out for tears. I see it.
Sorry at all.
This is not quite a tear thing. It's more like an ulcer kind of thing.
But I mean, I think it was like, wasn't it Jan or something who was doing that presentation? I don't remember.
Yeah, that's what Brandon. So they go by his since he's no longer at CCP.
Wait, didn't he leave? Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you get the people who are making these promises and making this speculation, and they are all gone or they're working on other projects. How the hell are you supposed to pick up on something unless they've kept very meticulous notes on how this stuff was supposed to fit together?
Well, the other problem is...
Wait. If they kept meticulous notes on how this was supposed to fit together, the point that you have to look at here is whether or not they had an idea how it was supposed to fit together to begin with.
Yeah, a lot of it...
That's a logical lead, but we're not ready to make yet.
A lot of stuff in Dust feels like slapdash. Like, it was just like, hey, this is cool. Let's put it in because maybe it'll be something that people will be like, ooh, it's cool. This is cool.
I'm gonna agree there. There is one thing I wish.
Yeah, the Commando was like a bone thrown to the heavy community.
It was, and it was a bad bone. But can I make a suggestion that I would like you guys to present to Rattati as far as the assaults go?
An agenda you want pushed?
No, this is a suggestion.
Oh, okay.
Basically, take away the whole jack of all trades idea for assault and replace with mainline infantry, vanguard infantry. These are the guys who jump out of the boat and attack the beach. They're the U.S. Marines. They're the Army, mainline guys. They're not jacks of all trades. They're attackers. They're the guys who build trench lines. They are fighters, pure and simple, not a jack of all trades suit. They are just mainline infantry.
Kill everything.
That's kind of the point of the infantry. They're not trying to do everything at once. They're just there to blow your ass away.
Well, what would you change from what they currently do to reach that goal?
Mindset. Because, like I say, when I say that the assault should be the vanguard, they should be the main line. The philosophy I'm operating on is just one of tactical doctrine. There is no functional tactical doctrine involved in the balancing of Dust right now. I guess the thing that I've been trying to beat around and trying to come to badly is the fact that my whole idea behind the Sentinel Battle Roll proposal and a couple other different things are based around the idea of creating a tactical doctrine that people can use. With logistics being support, they're obviously support. They're not a mainline Slayer suit. Scouts are kind of iffy because they're very good at assassinations, but they're also very good at doing other stuff. The problem is they're not distinct enough from assault suits to really make a difference. Unfortunately, the Sentinel suit, which would be perfect and beautiful as a fire support and vehicular destruction suit, which are both support roles for Vanguard infantry, again, are currently the main line because of map building and the fact that they are clustered into CQC.
Just a note, the HMG, because of the way shield regeneration works on vehicles now, it can't actually even kill LAVs if it doesn't have fluxes.
It can't. Unless you popped it with an AV grenade or a forge gun or something similar, you can't kill a vehicle. It's that simple.
So that's kind of stupid in my opinion.
Well,
yeah, but,
I mean, the HMG is already so good at anti-personnel. I'm not sure if it really necessarily needs a leading role in also killing vehicles as well.
No,
why
it
should
doesn't.
It be so good at anti-infantry?
The thing is while everybody occasionally tries to call the HMG a suppression weapon. Suppression is a combination of range and damage. You can't have a suppression weapon that has, a range that's shorter than your dick. It's that simple. I'm sorry.
The laser rifle is actually a very, very well designed suppression weapon.
The laser rifle is one of two weapons that fits the suppression role. The only close range suppression weapon that we have is the mass driver, and it's a grenade launcher. They suppress things. It's the way they work. But the laser rifle is literally the only traditional suppression weapon in the game. The reason why I made the Sentinel battle roll was because I would like to see less Sentinels on the field, more assaults. Sentinels being the support for the assault vanguard.
I just love the way the laser rifle was designed.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very damaging, but that's as long as you don't stay in cover. So basically, perfect suppression weapon.
That's the whole point of suppression. Is the only way you suppress someone is if they're afraid they're actually going to bite it because they stick around.
That's right.
Yes, but at the same time, you can't have them super, super damaging to the point where you have no chance to run into cover.
Oh yeah, exactly. The problem with the HMG and let's go with the assault rifle too because it's in the same range. There's a reason why most modern militaries, when you're ambushed within 50 meters, they don't tell you to hunker down. They tell you to charge, assault through, and kill because it's more efficient that way. The ranges are so short you can't suppress anybody. It's always going to be in your best interests to move in and take the kill. With the HMG, you don't try to keep them behind cover because they're so close. It's always more in your benefit to move forward and kill them.
Well, that really comes down to one of the main functions of why the laser rifle is balanced is that it just naturally does less damage up close, which comes to the question of how do you make a long-range suppression weapon not perform as well in close range, making it overpowered like a lot of the weapons we've been dealing with.
That's why I was suggesting the turn speed penalties on the standard and assault HMGs. Not the burst, because that one's pure CQC. There's no way to make the burst useful at long range the way it is.
As far as making assaults mainline infantry, I remember back when assaults, before the buff, I suggested giving them very high regeneration, and I think that will still work. Since to be a mainline infantry, you need to stay at the front line. You need to be able to keep a front line.
You need to be able to stay on the front lines, but the problem is if you just give them a massive regeneration buff, that does nothing to do to mitigate the superiority of like a shotgun or a HMG and CQC. You're still going to have them marginalized. They can't be the main line of defense.
I think this is just... One change isn't going to do anything. We need to change multiple factors before this can happen, what you're talking about.
Right, but like I said, as far as I think that we need to start looking at the assault as the main line and the other suits as the supporting line. That's part of the problem with the drop suit balances is there's no clear vision, so now we've got Sentinels as the main line of defense. They're also the door kickers. They all operate at close range in maps that are pretty much all CQC. Right. Does anybody else see a problem with this? Or is it just me? The problem with Sentinels is they're killable. They're infinitely killable. The problem is you can't get Sentinel players to expose themselves because their optimal is
What's with you
in
asking people to
tight.
expose themselves?
Well, because one, I like seeing people show their wangs in What do you think? You can't shoot a Sentinel with a charged sniper rifle while he's inside the Galent laboratory. You can't. I mean, and the charged sniper rifle is purpose built for blowing Sentinels' heads off.
What he's saying is that to get a line of sight on Sentinels, you basically have to get within their optimal.
That's why I keep saying Sentinel disadvantages are completely offset by CQC. Because you can't get at them with the weapons that will kill them. You're inside their optimal. They'll kill you first, unless you happen to get a luck shot off with a plasma cannon.
Or have a RE.
Or shotgun.
Right. But the thing is those are all situational weapons, and because of the ass pulls you have to do to make them effective against Sentinels, they're overperforming against assault suits.
So what would you suggest?
Remember the effect where when you get hit, your speed gets reduced?
Yep. And I remember it didn't really affect me as a Sentinel way back in the day.
Yes. Now, what if we reintroduce it to your design of the HMG, basically making it I'm trying to make it a suppression weapon, and honestly, if I knew that an HMG is going to slow me down, I would stay the fuck behind cover.
The thing is my concept for the HMG as a support weapon is very similar to your standard 30 caliber M60 Echo 3 240 Golf medium machine gun. It's a 30 caliber machine gun.
That's a nice name.
Under normal circumstances, they are what are called crew-served weapons. The whole purpose of a heavy suit, as far as I can tell, is to make a crew-served weapon, which would require 2 or more men to operate properly into a single-man weapon platform. Am I particularly far off as far as you guys are concerned?
Nope.
Yeah, sounds pretty much on.
Let's look at the standard light machine gun versus the HMG. Everybody's going to immediately go, keep your real life out of my game. Unfortunately, this is one of those things where real life inspiration can be used to balance an in-game problem. But you take that LMG, okay, or my medium machine gun, the 30 caliber long range, that thing will hit you from over a mile out accurately. But it's a 4-foot long gun. This is going to create problems in CQC to begin with. You can't whip that thing around. The second thing is it weighs over 20 pounds. I believe fully loaded with a belt, if I recall correctly, the damn thing is close on to 30 pounds. Can you imagine whipping that thing around in close quarters?
Well, here's the thing though.
Apparently there's an ISIS guy that can do it.
You're in this wonderful drop suit that is basically a spaceship and probably assists you with carrying things.
There's a precedent for what I'm talking about. Have you ever played freaking Warhammer 40k?
No.
Okay. Warhammer
40k.
Yeah, it's your loss. But Warhammer 40k, one of the main groups is the Space Marines. They wear power armor. They're heavy weapon. For the most part, they're kitted out in power armor in fashion very similar to what we have on our assault suits. But they have these other guys called Terminators or Devastators. Devastators are, power armor suits with heavy weapons. Generally, when they're firing, they're locked in. They're static. Terminator suits are closer to what we have for the heavies. They're slower than the standard suits under normal circumstances, but by the same token, they can move and fire. But they're unwieldy, they're unmaneuverable, they're not really great for CQC except for dealing with things that are pretty much exclusively hand-to-hand. But the thing is they're slow turning, they're unmaneuverable, they're unwieldy and close. They're lethal at range because you just can't get close to them. But once you're in close, it's like shooting a turtle in the side of the head while it's on its back.
That poor turtle.
Yeah. The thing is when I say, let's put a turn speed penalty on the heavy weapon. You put it on the weapon itself for a specific reason. That way you can differentiate between a CQC heavy weapon like the Burst HMG, which is beautifully designed. You can't use that as a vanguard weapon. It's best used in support of an advance, an attack, or in support of a defense. It can't be the mainline one. It doesn't function long enough. It has very clear drawbacks. The problem is we've got sustained fire weapons in CQC, like the Boundless HMG. They can fire for too long. And now we're trying to control them through heat, which is great. The problem is eventually we're going to hit that point where we're on the razor's edge between too effective and completely useless. The burst HMG hits the razor's edge, and it's standing on top of it. As long as none of the meta on any of the other suits changes overly much, it's going to remain balanced. As soon as you do so much as a hit point change on an assault suit, that balance goes out the window, and you got to find the razor's edge again. This is why I say the HMG and CQC is a problem.
Well, guys, I think this is a really good discussion, but unfortunately, we're pushing well over 2 hours now on the show, so we're probably going to be wrapping it up pretty soon here. Definitely a good topic to pick up next week. So the chat room's pretty busy right now. Does this time work really well for everyone?
It's better than
Yes.
11.
This is about the only time you guys are ever going to be able to
Perfect for me.
see me on this show.
Same.
Okay, because I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I can actually
it's
make it
not-
Saturday.
I can't speak for Zell or Jason, but for me, it's really not much of an issue. It's just noon on Saturday, and I'm not doing anything. So I mean, it's something we could definitely look into on a more regular basis. I'm not sure if we'll do it this time every
it's
week.
not
but
ideal perfectly, but it's a workable thing on the weekends. So.
we could figure it out. Maybe tweak it, alternate back and forth or something. Figure something out. But it's good to see this many people on because sometimes we're a little hurting for guests on Sunday night, which I totally get because it's not ideal for a lot of people, especially with the time. So. Something we'll look into, but yeah, like I said, it's a really good discussion with the HMG. I think it's something that deserves more time, but unfortunately, we're kind of pushing the limit here, and I got stuff to do, so we'll probably be moving on to shout outs, unless there's any quick topics anyone else has before we go.
Nerf goldfish from active memory 30 seconds to 13 seconds. They're overpowered.
Okay, and their heat buildup's a little off. Just tweak that. All right, guys, but we'll move to shout-outs now. Let's go down from the top of the list. Lethargic?
Let's just shout out to all of our listeners. Thanks for tuning in and supporting the Dust community in that. Thank you.
All right, cool. Arcana?
Shout out to Terrible Form Warriors for making my day.
Yeah, you can't let them get to you. All right, Breakin'?
Well, shout out to just about everybody, especially to the Goon Feet who actually listened to this show because you had to put up with listening to me for 2 hours straight.
All right, Catmark.
Same. Shout out to anyone who is actually listening.
All right, and Cross?
Shout out to the feedback and ideas folks who have put up with me trying to do 7 things at once because it needs to get done, and to the at least quote-unquote logistics players who apparently showed up to the game recently and asked me if I'd ever done the job because I think bandwidth makes sense.
Yeah, well, you know how it goes. All right, Kane?
Just a shout out to the audience, and also for anybody looking to do any currency exchange, just hit me up.
All right, and Soraya?
Shout out to Kane for finally coming on the show. I think we've been trying to get you on it for like 25, 26 episodes or something. So.
And for being hard-coded into 1.9. You're stuck now, Sparrow.
Yeah.
Hopefully 1.10 doesn't nerf me.
Yeah. Well, it's good stuff, guys. Shout out to everyone here. Really glad to have you. It's good to get some new voices on, and I do apologize for the weird time we had before. We'll figure something out because I definitely like having lots of opinions, and it was a really good show. So thanks for all being here. Aside from that, thanks for everyone listening. My corp, Rattati, the whole team, everyone working in the Dust project. It's really shaping up. I mean, honestly, my expectations were pretty low post FanFest, and there's definitely change happening, and I feel like the game's actually moving forward and progressing to some extent, which is really good to see. So it's definitely encouraging. But yeah, with that, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being with us. We will let you know what we're doing with the times. I think, like I said, this works really well for a lot of people, at least for the guests, and it's not as much of a problem for me, and hopefully it works for Jason and Zell to some extent once we figure out what we're doing. But overall, thanks for showing up and listening to us. So with that, that's episode 30? 30?
30.
All right, 30.
We've
30.
actually survived 30 weeks of this.
Yeah, it's going strong. It's good.
Title, hashtag Dust is Dust Future.
You nuts.
You know you want to, Zell.
Oh, jeez. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you later.
I was just thinking, 30 weeks ago, I don't think anybody thought we had a future, so.